Are we experiencing a changing of the guard in college football? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Leave those comments, those questions there in the live chat. The super chat will allow us to recognize those for sure. And again, in any way that you would like to support us, if you enjoy the content, whether those are the pre-produced videos that we post on a regular basis, try to get one up at least every day, 1 video to 2 videos per day here on the main channel, the national channel, and live streams all the time. I counted over 33 hours of live streaming here on Realignment since last Friday. So we deliver here at the Voice of College Football thanks to you. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your contribution, your engagement here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we'll get to your comments and questions. We have left the link to call the show a couple times there in the chat. And the topic tonight, keeping in mind that we're always open to talk college football regardless. Anything you want to talk about, if you want to call me about the Purdue defense, give me a call. There is nothing that's not on the table concerning college football. We're just 3 weeks away from week 0. So we need to talk football on the field. However, major developments over the last week, maybe the most historic week of changes, wide-ranging, big picture, wide scale, catastrophic decisions and changes in college football that has basically wrecked one conference that has been a historic pillar of the sport for decades and decades and decades, 100-year conference, roughly, by the wayside. No hope of salvaging the Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-6, Pac-4. The Big Ten getting stronger, the SEC. What will the next move be for the nation's best conference? And when I say best conference, I mean best conference on the field. It has been decisive. We are going to look at the numbers. We're going to match up the Big Ten and the SEC, and we are going to give our thoughts, and we want to hear from you on the possible switch in power at the top of college football. These are the two brands. There's no doubt it is the Power 2, as deemed by many. We will see it play out. Big 12 fans, not to discard your additions. We have posted all sorts of videos. We have given all sorts of attention to the additions of Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona State. Check out the videos. We have matched up those schools against the Big 12 and what that could look like going forward, what it's looked like in the recent past. We will do the same and actually have done the same. We are forward thinking here at the Voice of College Football. If you go back 3 or 4 months, we were posting videos about how would Oregon fare in the Big Ten and how would Washington fare in the Big Ten? And here we are. So we will repackage those videos, update those videos, and deliver those in the next couple days. I want to supply some information, some facts to base our argument and our discussion today. Again, you can talk about anything concerning college football if you give me a call, but our focus here, the Big Ten and the SEC, and is there a changing of the guard? Make no mistake about it, Big Ten fans, the SEC runs this sport on the field. The money's close, and now the Big Ten has surpassed, with this new deal, has surpassed the SEC, and it was slightly ahead of the SEC in regards to resources financially. The facilities, you'd have to go from school to school, but it's awfully close. In terms of television households and the attention on television, the SEC probably has a slight advantage. We did a 5 or 6 part series earlier, so check out those videos. It was awfully close and continues to be year by year. That was only 1 year of television ratings, but aside from the outliers like a TCU going on a run and being a national story, those hold true from year to year. And it's awfully close between the SEC and the Big Ten in regards to who you watch. All right, so we're going to line this up. Let's keep in mind, look at these numbers historically and also currently. So let's set up the argument here. All time, the SEC and the Big Ten, they don't play enough. They do not play enough in the regular season. They have had a long-standing 3 matchup series in bowl play in the Capital One/Citrus Bowl, the Gator Bowl in recent years, and of course the Outback Bowl, whatever that was called and changed to, with Mississippi State taking on Illinois this past season. But the SEC owns the Big Ten 104-70. Now that's going back to the beginning of time. So let's frame it up recently. So the SEC with a 10-7, if you want to bring the numbers down into a place where we can grasp them. All time in bowls, they played exactly 100 bowl games. Now, there might be some ties in there as well. I didn't see, but there's 1 or 2 or 3. It doesn't matter. There's not been a tie in college football since the rules changed in 1997. 65-35. So the SEC in postseason play. So when you look at regular season games, obviously, we don't know the seeding of the teams. There's a bunch of unfair matchups because they're scheduling games 13 years in advance, and there's no system, there's no format, there's no formula. So scheduling in college football, if you've just joined us here at the Voice of College Football, maybe in the last few weeks, I've gone on rants about this. I've produced videos. We've done live streams. Scheduling is screwed up in college football and continues to be. We would fix it. We know how to fix it. But therefore, we cannot really rate the overall series in a sense at 104-70, SEC leading. But you got to think after almost 200 games played that it evens out in regards to the fairness of the matchups. For example, if Alabama and Georgia were scheduled to play Rutgers and Indiana this year and the SEC was 2-0 against the Big Ten, what would that mean? Nothing. So the fairness of the matchups comes more into play during postseason play. These are fair matchups in postseason play, whether they are recent playoff games in which, let's see, the SEC and the Big Ten have matched up how many times in the playoffs? Ohio State beat Alabama in 2014. After that, Alabama beat Michigan State. Alabama beat Ohio State in a national championship game. Georgia beat Michigan. Georgia beat Ohio State. That's 4-1. Anybody else involved there? That should be at 4-1 SEC during the playoff era. 65-35 postseason play SEC with a commanding lead. And then let's bring it up to date. Since 2000, the SEC has won 55 and the Big Ten 37. And in bowl play, it's 44-25. And so again, like seeded teams, fair matchups, and shoot, we can go to particular matchups and say, yeah, we really think Ohio State was better than Georgia when they played last year. Okay. We cannot cherry pick games because we could do that from both sides. There's no question about that. That is 69 games in postseason play. That is 92 games total in the decade. That's a lot of games. We could point to all sorts of games, and I'm sure it's fair on both sides in regards to saying, okay, well, the SEC got ripped off here, the Big Ten got ripped off there, or that was so close we couldn't tell. Okay, the SEC's just flat out been substantially better than the Big Ten. Substantially, significantly better. That doesn't mean like dominant. That's another word that gets thrown out. I would fall short of dominance and say significantly better. Those numbers show you right there. And again, the postseason play, and you can talk about bowl games and who doesn't care about bowl games. Well, we're going to assume, and rightfully so, that whatever apathy there is toward bowl games is just about equal on both sides, and it shouldn't matter. The results are the results, and they count. Okay, so that's what it's been since the year 2000, and then very recently, 8-5 Big Ten, and then 8-3 in bowl games, and it comes quickly to mind that 8-5 means 2-0 for the Big Ten in the regular season, and that's Penn State playing Auburn. So over the last 2 years, a really good Penn State team, or at least this past season, they were really good, close to top 5 in the nation with a Rose Bowl win, defeated a bad Auburn team at 5-7, 2-6 in the SEC. So is that a fair matchup? No. Penn State the year before was better than Auburn. Is there slightly better than Auburn? Fair matchup? Not really. So that's where you got to look at the matchups. But again, postseason play, they are fair matchups. They're like seeded matchups. And the SEC has won 8 of 11 matchups against the Big Ten since 2020. So that's in 2020 and 21 and 22. All right. Before I take your comments and questions, before I take your calls, we've had a couple people call. Hang on just a second. Let's be patient. As was reiterated to me this morning in a message, patience, the power of patience. All right. Because I sized up the two conferences this way currently. Okay. We've had some changes, folks, called Oklahoma, Texas. So the SEC punch. Big Ten, boom, counter punch. And then the Big Ten, uppercut, counter punch this past week. Oklahoma, Texas, 2021 edition for the SEC. USC, UCLA, the counter punch for the Big Ten. And then the Big Ten comes back in with Washington, Oregon. So we had 14 schools playing football in both conferences through this next season in 2023. Now we move ahead to 2024 and 4 editions for the Big Ten, 2 editions for the SEC. And we're going to rank the programs. And I know that many of you are going to have all sorts of suggestions about, they're ranked too high, they're too low, blah, blah, blah. Okay. It's not a perfect system. I eyeballed it. I came up with the rankings. I was going to go with tiers, but let's just take them 1 through 18 and 1 through 16. And I will argue the rankings order with anyone. And again, don't go crazy if number 9 should be number 8 in your eyes. Yes, but I'm talking about programs right this second. But there has to be some historical context given to that as well. And I'll explain it as we run through the program rankings as they stand right now in both the Big Ten and the SEC. So let's get to them. Let's get to them once I can find them. Here we go. So here we go. So Big Ten programs, this is how I'm ranking the Big Ten programs. Let me play technical director and producer at the same time, if I can. All right. So these are the program rankings in the Big Ten. Let me clear the deck here. Ohio State at number 1, Michigan number 2. Again, yes, Michigan's won the last 2 games and they get the Big Ten championships. But again, we're combining historical significance, historical ceiling. We're taking everything into consideration, and this is extremely accurate. What can I say? Ohio State, Michigan, USC, the ceiling's much higher than Penn State, even though Penn State is currently possibly better, at least last season, slightly better than USC. You saw the next grouping, Oregon, Washington, Wisconsin on down the line, UCLA, Minnesota, Purdue, Maryland, and then the final schools in the Big Ten. Of course, Illinois had a nice season this last year, but we're looking at one of the losingest programs in the history of college football. I looked at the all-time records. They are one of the 10 losingest programs in history. Nebraska, of course, could elevate significantly. Then we've got Indiana, Rutgers, Northwestern. Certainly the bottom of the Big Ten is easy to figure out those final 3. Nebraska has the biggest window or opportunity to elevate. But basically, again, I'm not going to get into squabbles about 1 or 2 ranking places. This is a generality here. Georgia has taken over for Alabama as the best program in the Big Ten. That's pretty simple to see, although Alabama is certainly capable of reclaiming that number 1 spot. LSU currently at number 3. Yes, Oklahoma had a bad season last year. We're ranking programs, and we'll see if Brent Venables is up to the challenge, but based on recent production, recent results, Oklahoma is clearly better than these other teams in the SEC. and have been in recent years. As we go down the list, we'll see, yes, I got Texas fairly high considering the ceiling, considering what they're capable of accomplishing. They have 2 national championship game appearances in the last 15 or 16 years. Tennessee riding off the one big year. A lot of people may think that they're a little high, but again, generalities here. Into context, yes, Florida is probably a worse team than number 8 in the SEC right now, especially with the other 2 joining. But let's understand, Dan Mullen had them in New Year's 6 games, 3 consecutive seasons just a few years ago. Auburn can elevate. And that's why, so for example, Mississippi State has been a better football team than Texas has been the last few years. But there's no question or no real comparison between the program ability and the ceiling there. Kentucky, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas. The rest of this SEC lineup is extremely close. Everywhere from about number 10 with Kentucky on through the rest of these schools down to Missouri, you could throw them in anywhere. 10 through 14 or 15, very close with those particular rankings. So I'll continue to let that run through, and we'll take your calls. Here we go. First up at the Voice of College Football, we got Tide Guy on the line. Tide Guy, what's going on?
Hey, how we doing?
Doing well. What's going on today, man?
Well, I see that the Big Ten is going to add some schools, and I was looking at the numbers, and if they are lucky enough to add Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, they will still have one fewer national championship than the SEC since 1973.
Okay. Why 1973? You're just going 50 years?
50 years. I mean, we can go back further.
Sure.
But I just went to the 50-year point.
Okay. Yeah. National championships for me, of course, mean something, but I'm not locked in on national championships because they're so incredibly flawed throughout history. But they're certainly indicative of how good a team is. But as you know, there were usually 2 or 3 or 4 other teams that had just as big a claim or right of a claim for a national championship in a given year as the team that actually was awarded a national championship by a bunch of sports writers. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really started in like 91 when we had mostly just one. A couple years we had a couple, but before that, a lot of times it was split, especially in the 70s. You had
I'm not talking about the actual split. I'm talking about what actually was earned. So there's a lot of teams that don't have national championships, for example, in my book, that had just as much of a right to play for the national championship or win a national championship.
Right. The other thing I think is pretty cool, and this is just the original Big Ten, and I included Nebraska and Penn State in that. I didn't add USC and UCLA, any of the new ones. But if you look at the original Big Ten and the original SEC,
yep,
the SEC is the only conference that all of their members have a winning record in bowl games. Now, Vanderbilt is 4-4-1, so that's exactly 500. But all the others, now that's not including Texas A&M, and that's not including Missouri.
Yeah.
The
originals.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, I think that's impressive. I think that means something. I think that means a lot.
I know Michigan, Bo had trouble with the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
Michigan had plenty of years, where they were a great team and they struggled in the bowls. And I do understand that some of the bowls in the older days were kind of lopsided. They wasn't necessarily as evenly matched as some of the ones are today. But a lot of those Rose Bowls, Ohio State, Iowa, Michigan, they were favored in quite a few of them.
Oh, sure, they were. Not Iowa, but yeah, the other two.
I thought Iowa was favored though over Washington in 81.
Really? Wow. That was a mess up by Vegas if that was the case. You might be right. I would be. I think man, 28-0. My memory of that game, man, I got to think Iowa was a pretty sizable underdog, but I don't
Well,
even know
remember
if I
though,
could
they
look
had
that
Chuck
up.
Long, which was the runner-up in the Heisman.
You're mixing up Rose Bowls. Chuck Long was playing high school football at that point. So he lost the 85 Rose Bowl, the 86 Rose Bowl, the 85 season at
Oh,
UCLA.
that's right. He was 80. Yeah, him and
Yeah,
Harmon were 86.
that Iowa team. Yes, they were a favorite.
That
Yes,
Iowa team was
absolutely. They
favorite.
were a
Yeah.
favorite that was against UCLA.
And what was it? Harmon fumbled the ball like 3 times that game, I believe, if I remember right.
That UCLA team came into the Rose Bowl with a record of 6-4-1.
Yeah, that was
they lost all their non-conference games.
Yeah. But I do think, though, I mean, the Big Ten is going to beat the SEC number-wise. I mean, look at the markets. It's hard for the SEC to compete market-wise. But I do think if you look at revenue, I do still think the SEC will do well in revenue. I mean, because we got the big stadiums, we got, huge, tremendous fan bases and that. So I think revenue-wise, at least the top of the SEC will compete with the Big Ten. And I do think the Big Ten and the SEC does try to change the college football playoff where they're going to get more teams in. I think that'll benefit both the SEC and the Big Ten making more money. I do think, though, that with the additions the Big Ten are making, and if they can get some of the ACC teams, I think the on-field advantage will shrink a little if we let the Big Ten, take a Florida State, take a Miami, get into those recruiting grounds where, the Big Ten can say, hey, we're going to play down there, so you can stay home. I think that really will help the Big Ten.
So when you say you think it'll shrink, I was thinking in reverse. I was thinking the other way. I was thinking that your thought process was that the Big Ten had surpassed the SEC. Okay, so let's back up. So the way things currently stand, 14 versus 14, you think the SEC is how much better?
On the field, I would say quite a bit on the field.
Okay.
When we go 16-16, adding USC is going to be huge. Getting that California market for recruiting is going to be huge. I mean, Alabama has thrived the last 15 years recruiting out of California. You look at some of the players we got there, that's really helped. But with USC going to the Big Ten and USC finally being relevant again, they're going to lock down recruits. So I think the gap will shrink. But I think some SEC fans would be foolish to think that if we lost Florida State, Miami, and Clemson to the Big Ten, that the on the field wouldn't shrink even more.
So the reason I'm setting this up is because I think there's a valid argument that the SEC's already been eclipsed. Now we have to see it play out, but you add USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington versus the addition of Oklahoma, Texas. Now, what versions of those schools are you going to get? We'll have to wait and see. But a lot of people would argue that the Big Ten has eclipsed the SEC now.
My problem with Oregon is this. Oregon, USC has been down, about 12, 13 years. Now, they had the one season that they popped back up, but they've been down at least, let's say, the last 10 seasons.
Yeah, depending on your definition of down. A lot of people would, they've had top 10 teams at least 3 times in those years, but go ahead. Yeah, they've been down. By their standards, they've been down.
Right.
Yes.
So what has Oregon done since USC has been down? The last 8 years. Now, they did make it to the
last
playoffs.
8 years. Yeah. But before that, they were one of the elite teams in college football for 5 to 8 years.
So, right. And so was Nebraska also, but look at Nebraska today.
Whoa, wait a minute. For Nebraska, you got to go back another 10 years.
Right. You got to go back to 2001.
Yes.
Right.
Oregon, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Hardly anybody was better than them. Maybe just Alabama.
Right. and a couple years maybe LSU, but yeah, I mean they were recruiting
but
at
I
a
mean
top
overall
level,
during that time frame, I bet they have the second best record in college football.
Right, but even with the second best record, they didn't do anything with it.
They didn't. They went to 2 national championship games.
Right, but they lost 2 national championship games.
I understand, but you said they didn't do anything with it. They played in 2 national championship games, and they won a bunch of BCS bowl games. They won Rose Bowls. I think they did a lot with it. They won Pac-12 championships. They won championships.
Right, but I'm saying if you want to compare them and overtake the SEC, you got to win championship. I mean,
well, you're talking about winning national championships, and again, I just think that's completely overblown. There's only one of them, and yeah, I just think it's so incredibly overrated. It matters, of course, and I would want my team to win them because that's what everybody's paying attention to. But I steer this channel to be a little bit smarter than that.
Well, then we can also look, though, at head-to-head bowl games against each other, head-to-head record. I mean, until the Big Ten can truly beat the SEC, even on.
Well, yeah, we're projecting forward.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no reason to talk about this. Yes, the SEC's better.
But
yes.
I don't know the Big Ten is there in the next 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 to 10 years, we could say that. But I don't know in the next 3 to 4 if the Big Ten. I think it's going to take at least 5 years for the Big Ten to catch up to where the SEC is currently.
So if there are no additions, Jeff, you don't think that there's not immediate impact?
Oh, I think there's immediate impact, but I just don't think they're quite to the SEC yet. Are they a lot closer than they were before USC and UCLA came? I think USC will do more for the Big Ten than what Oklahoma and Texas will do to the SEC. I think the adding of USC is that huge. I really do.
I agree. And especially if you're taking it in your direction and just looking at the very top and gunning for national championships, I think USC could have the biggest impact.
Well, and the other thing is by adding Texas, not that Texas ain't a great school. It's not, not that it's a blue blood, but we already have Texas as a recruiting base for the SEC. Most of the SEC already recruits well in Texas, where the Big Ten is gaining California to recruit in. So that's definitely going to improve not just USC, but it's going to improve all the Big Ten schools. I do think in the long run, Washington will pan out to be a better ad than Oregon.
Okay.
I like what Washington is capable of doing right now. Not that Lanning can't do it up in Oregon, and not that they can't come back to great, but I think Washington is just a little ahead of Oregon right this minute.
Okay. I think that's just such a toss-up. I think we could argue all night between those two. And I would take either side against if somebody else called and said Oregon is the program, I would take the other side and argue it. I think it's indistinguishable.
But I can see where you could say the Big Ten. I mean, I see you put up the top.
No, I'm talking about between Oregon and Washington.
It's right. No, but I see you put up the Big Ten programs, the top 4.
Yeah.
If you look at the top 5 to 6 of the Big Ten, I think compete very well against the top 5 to 6 of the SEC.
Yeah.
I just think the top 2 to 3 of the SEC is still that much better than the top 3 of the Big Ten.
You think that Georgia, Alabama, and LSU are that much better than Ohio State, Michigan, and USC?
I do. And here's why. Michigan don't impress me. They're 21-29 in bowl games. You put them in a bowl game, they do not win.
Well, yeah. But we're talking about right now.
No, I'm talking right now. You
put 21-29. That's, we're talking about.
Oh, no, you go out there and that could change. But I'm saying in the next 4 to 5 years.
They're not showing up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michigan fans don't want to hear this, and other Big Ten fans don't want to hear this. And this is being somewhat of an Ohio State elitist. And I know that that's my team. And so then I hurt my reputation of being neutral when I say this, but this is just the freaking truth that if you take Ohio State out of the Big Ten, there's been no competition nationally in the last 20 years, like nothing of any significance from anybody else. Nothing.
Right. Penn State has tried a couple years to have some good teams, but they always fall short at the end of the year.
Yeah,
they always got big buildups, and then in November, it's like something happens.
Yes, I'm being somewhat general. Michigan State won a Rose Bowl against Stanford 10 years ago, and they beat Baylor in the Cotton Bowl, and Penn State jumped up and won. They've won, a couple New Year's Six games, three New Year's Six games under James Franklin, but they didn't have championship aspirations on the line at that point. It was just a nice season.
Right. And Iowa's had some good teams. They just don't have the offense.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the Big Ten. The West has been down so long that Ohio State has had to carry it. And then the last 2 years, Michigan is trying to get there. And I think Michigan is recruiting I say this a lot. Michigan, to me, always recruited to win the Big Ten. That was what they tried to. They wanted to win the Big Ten.
Yep.
Where Ohio State recruited to beat Alabama, they recruited for the national championship, where Michigan only went for the Big Ten. And now I think Harbaugh is trying to recruit better to do better on the national stage.
And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but SEC haters, detractors will say, well, it's all Georgia, Alabama. Well, no, Florida won 2 national championships 15 years ago. And even Dan Mullen, not the greatest coach in the world, really good coach, offensive coach, he went to 3 New Year's Six. Like there's more programs that have peaked. Obviously LSU.
Right.
Auburn,
I hate to say it, but Auburn.
We played in 2 national championship games and won one since 2010. That wasn't that long ago.
Right.
So many different teams can jump up in the SEC as opposed to it's playing for national championships. It's been one in the Big Ten.
Right. And if you look from 98 to today, once Texas and Oklahoma come over.
Yeah.
8 of the 16 SEC teams have won a national championship.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I understand that sometimes I get short-sighted and look at national championship as,
Well, I don't want to misrepresent myself. The national championship is enormous. It's everything. It's why you play. I try to balance out that that narrative just because I think it's a little overplayed. And it's like the gold medal in the Olympics. Like if all we looked at is the gold medal and didn't look at, and we were comparing countries and there were 50 athletes competing in each country. And we just said, well, they won the gold medal. That's that. And that's all we counted. Well, the guys that won the bronze and the silver, they're pretty good too. So I just try to give it a little bit more of a perspective beyond that.
Right. And I'm starting to figure that out because, I've been arguing with people about basketball also, and, in basketball, it's a lot harder to win the national championship than it is football. Football, you go through 2 people right now in the playoffs, where basketball, you get the 64, and so I do understand that, winning it all doesn't necessarily make the conference great, because there are years that it is just Alabama, LSU, or Alabama, Georgia. And, 9 of the other SEC teams are kind of coattail. They're just riding our coattails. And I understand that. But the SEC does have a history of having other teams come up. And I do think, 5 years from now, I'll call in and we'll see, where the Big Ten is. Who do they get? If they get Notre Dame, it'll be huge. And that'll be a real money gap that the SEC would have trouble with. Because Notre Dame's going to add too much money to, and I know there's some people out there who are crazy and think that Notre Dame would say, screw you to the Big Ten and come to the SEC. I've heard that. Well, they're just dumb. Notre Dame will never come to the SEC, no matter what it is. Notre Dame will be in the Big Ten. The question is when.
Mm-hmm. I tend to think the same thing. All right, Tide Guy, I appreciate you stopping by.
All right, Mark, you have a great day and great show.
Thank you so much. Great way to start the show. Tide Guy jumping on with great knowledge and insight. He loves his Tide. He loves college football. Michigan man, Jason. Tide Guy getting his daily Michigan jabs in. There it is. Yes, he did. But hey, facts are facts. All right, before we get to our next call, appreciate these super chats coming in. Maryland fan, crab cakes and football. SEC schedule with 3 cupcakes minimum in a bye week game, week 11, rigged for success. All right, we've been through this many times. Okay, so the advantage, okay, first of all, that's not every SEC team. So go through the schedules. So that number one is overplayed. If you go to week 11 or whatever the week number is with the buys included, if you go to the second to last weekend of the college football season year, go through 2022, 21, 20, 19. Okay. Number one, that narrative isn't top to bottom in the conference. They are playing conference games in the SEC in week 11. There are conference games, just not everyone. Okay, that's number one. Number two, they are fair to their own teams in making sure that not one of them is playing a scrimmage and somebody else has to play a legit opponent prior to their rivalry matchup the next weekend. Now, let's also understand that if we believe that that has a large impact on success in the playoffs 5 weeks later, then you're really stretching it. Go out and win the games. Does it have some kind of impact? Okay. But the SEC's not playing. See, here's another invalid point is that it's not like the SEC are playing inferior or easier schedules. First of all, of course, because the league's the best in America by a significant margin. They're not certainly playing the easiest schedules. They're playing the toughest schedules overall. But even non-conference, they're not playing the easiest schedules. Who did the SEC play non-conference last year? Oregon, Utah, Clemson, Miami, Texas, Florida State, anyway, we've run this down many times. Believe me, if you took all the teams that SEC teams played in non-conference play in the regular season, you went through all the games, and then you match that up against any other conference, they're playing the toughest non-conference games. Alabama played Texas. LSU played Florida State. Texas A&M played Miami. I know Miami sucked. Ole Miss played Georgia Tech and somebody else. Arkansas played BYU. They played a decent Liberty team. You got Mississippi State played Arizona. Auburn played Penn State. Florida played Utah. South Carolina played Clemson. South Carolina this year's playing. South Carolina's playing Clemson and North Carolina. Georgia played Oregon. Missouri played somebody. Kansas State. Vandy played Wake Forest. Another good team. Tennessee played Pitt. Another good team. 9-4 team. That's way beyond anybody else. Who'd the Big Ten play? Non-conference games last year. Notre Dame. Washington. Cincinnati. Boston College. Virginia. Oklahoma. And Syracuse. Iowa State. Kansas. Duke. 2 decent teams, 2 good teams. But again, no Oregon, Utah, Texas, Florida State, etc. All right, we'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Let's get the super chats in. Bizzer, they said the Buckeyes couldn't do it, but we did it. Buckeyes the best, whatever an EVA is. Y'all hate and watch this natty in 24 Buckeyes. OHOI. All right. I'm going to have to brush up on my. All right. Thank you so much for that, Bizzer. Appreciate you. Appreciate you being here. Danny coming in with, are you going to bring back Baltimore Neighbors and Smalls and the other guy who debated the Pac-12 versus the Big 12? I wasn't planning on it. We could. We can have all sorts of debates and so forth. Yes. I could make a declarative statement that would clear a lot of things up that would piss a lot of people off, but it's not within the framework of this show concerning people's opinions and so forth. I will say this. I got about 4 rants to go on concerning the kind of crap that I have to take from certain people about my guests and so forth. Okay. First off, my criteria for bringing guests on are that they know what they're talking about as best that I can tell. I don't have a staff of 37 people to vet guests. So I'm not out there looking at all their social media posts and everything else. If something comes across my path that in any way would discredit this person or in any such way would discredit them ethically or otherwise, then I'll make a judgment call on that. But I'm not going out running around chasing people's social media and looking at everything they post or their YouTube channels or anything else. I will evaluate them based on their performance and information and so forth brought here. Okay. And again, I have a number of rants that I could go on concerning that, but we're going to stick to the Big Ten and the SEC. And again, if you want to talk Big 12 expansion, if you want to talk anything else, week 0, week 1 matchups in college football, we are open to talk anything concerning college football. But that would be a heck of a discussion, as it always is. All 3 of those gentlemen are welcome here anytime. We had Josh Neighbors on last week. Spencer McLaughlin, we can never get scheduled, but we're constantly in communication trying to get things scheduled. We were supposed to record it just a few nights ago, and it just didn't work out. And of course, Tony Altimore is a bastion of knowledge. We've got Christian coming on board. Christian, how you doing tonight?
I'm pretty good. Thanks, Mark.
What's on your mind?
Just had a couple of things. I'm a Big Ten fan, by the way, but I live in the South. As much as I love the Big Ten, I just, with as passionate as fan bases as the SEC has, and I know the Big Ten has their fair share of fan bases as well, but my brother played for UT back in the Butch Jones era.
Yeah.
And we went to a lot of away games, and I have cousins that went to the University of Wisconsin, so we went to a couple of away games and home games for them as well.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. Like, I've been to an Ohio State game, I've been to a Michigan game, and then obviously a Wisconsin game. But if you go down like lower tier Big Ten, lower tier SEC, like a Mississippi State or Illinois, it's amazing. Like, I know Illinois has been down, and when they're good, they're probably one of the better fan bases in the Big Ten. But it's just amazing to see like the decline of passionate fans from Big Ten to SEC from the lower tier teams. But I love both conferences, obviously. But it's I don't know, even with the Big Ten bringing in UCLA, USC, like USC is a huge thing. I just don't, then Washington and Oregon are too, but with UCLA, I know it's probably because it's an off-campus stadium. I just don't, like those 3 they brought in, USC, Oregon, and Washington, they're big, but UCLA, I just don't see that being as big as a win as people say it is. Like, I get it's a big win, but I don't see how it's as big as people think it is. Sorry, that was a mouthful, but I just had to get that off my mind.
Yeah, UCLA's not been any kind of factor nationally for 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like participating for or getting anywhere close to being in the national championship race. I'm trying to think what conference championships they've won since that time. I don't think they've won a conference championship since 1998 either. So there you go.
And then I was also, I don't know how much you put into this, but I was looking at the recruiting rankings earlier today to see, because I know Wisconsin just now started spending money, and that's another thing I wanted to say. Like, I don't know how much you look into that, but I was looking at the recruiting rankings, and pretty much 7 out of the top 10 are all SEC programs this past year. I don't know if that's a big deal or not, but I just don't see as many Big Ten teams. Well, the new ones are, but like the original they have, I just don't see as many as those putting much money into recruiting. And I know we have a local kid at Bradley, or in my Bradley County area. He's ESPN top 100 receiver or something. And my brother talked to him the other day, and only the schools he's looking at are Colorado and a couple other big ones, but they're all major SEC programs. And then I think Ohio State's one of them he's looking at. But he was telling me he just cares about the NIL and the facilities is what his big thing are, and the TV exposure, obviously. So I was just, because I want Wisconsin to be good again, like they were, I guess, in the mid 2010s. So hopefully Luke Fickell can do that. But I just don't know. I just wish more Big Ten teams would put in more money into the facilities and recruiting and stuff. Because as much money as the SEC programs put in, I just hope the Big Ten starts doing that more, besides Michigan and Ohio State.
So you've hit on something interesting here, in that the Big Ten currently has a television contract that, to my knowledge, is slightly larger than the SEC. And then kicking in here in 2024 is going to be, I don't want to say substantially, it's going to be decidedly more money for each school than the SEC going forward. You know, they're going to bring in $1 billion per year overall to be distributed, and the SEC is bringing in something like 700 or 800 million. So what are these schools going to do with this money? And when you say 7 of the top 8 in the SEC in recruiting are SEC schools, I would love to get somebody who's on the ground with recruiting and get a breakdown of, you know, where is that money placed? It's obviously placed in travel, for one thing. And then besides that, you know, I would love to see the rundown of, because the money's important. It's almost like the recruiting rankings when we talk about competing for national championships. Does that guarantee that you're going to win national championships or compete for national championships? Well, Texas is a great example to let us know, no, that doesn't guarantee. You have to have a brain. So you got to combine the money with brains. But you have to have the money, or in the case of the recruiting rankings, the players, to win. And to recruit well, you need to have a coaching staff that knows what it's doing, but they also have to have the resources available to them. So I would hope that these Big Ten schools would take all that TV revenue and they would pump it into recruiting and in facilities. Now we know that Minnesota, Northwestern, and Illinois, off the top of my head, have built beautiful new facilities very recently.
Yeah, I know those. Didn't they? I think they're building. I know they had the plans to build a new stadium, and didn't they just build a new football only facility at Northwestern? I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
that's what I thought. Yeah, I know. I know with the TV contract, everyone should. I'm just kind of worried that they're gonna. I don't know. Tony Petitti's pretty smart, so I feel like he'd make them put it into facilities and stuff like that. So I'm kind of worried that the academia part of it's gonna, which it should. I mean, they're universities at the end of the day, but I just want to win more natties and get more national respect. Well, I live in the South though, so it's always get picked on for being a Big Ten fan down here. But I don't know. I just kind of hope that they step up their game in football aspects of it. I mean, they're Big Ten's no slouch, obviously, but I don't know. I just kind of want to see like programs like Illinois and Wisconsin's get back to where they were in. Well, was Illinois back in the early 2000s and Wisconsin's in the 2010s. I just want to see them get back up in there again.
Absolutely. All right, Christian. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Have a good night. We will keep it moving here. The voice of college football. Here's another stat that comes to mind that we will post here. Since the start of the college football playoff era, if I'm doing my math correctly, if I'm not, please catch me, but I did the math in my head very quickly there. College football playoff record. Now that speaks volumes. You really can't. Again, you can put all sorts of context to that. To me, it matters if you lose 38-0 like Michigan State did against Alabama versus losing 42-41 on a missed field goal in the last play of the game against the best team in the country. A loss is a loss, a win's a win, yes, in terms of determining the championship, but we're doing evaluations. And those two results, to me, are just decidedly enormously different. However, the record just... The SEC gets the most opportunities. So ever since the BCS started, the SEC gets the most opportunities from the people selecting, and they're not always earned opportunities. So let's understand, SEC fans, for a second, that the league has received the most opportunities, both in the BCS era and in the playoff era. So when you receive more opportunities, you simply have more opportunities to win championships and win games. However, they have obviously taken advantage. We've got Immaculate checking in here at the Voice of College Football. What's going on? Hello, Immaculate. 1, 2.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. What's going on tonight?
Damn mute button on my mic. Nothing. I'm just calling in. Kind of an interesting topic here. We can get away from the realignment for at least a day, right?
Well, are we really?
I mean, by choice, maybe.
Well,
not really, but
actually, it's the realignment that caused me to post this and go this direction.
Yeah, this week could be add more to that. But in terms of taking down the SEC, I don't think that's ever possible. I mean, they're pretty far and away, I think, the best football conference in the country, and they have been. They do probably have the best across the board. But when I hear a lot of their talk, it's talking about the history up till today. And I wonder, are you watching the future right now and where things are going right now?
Well, that's why we're talking. That's what this is all about.
And that's my big thing is I definitely think the Big Ten.
Did you see we posted rankings of all the programs, including Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, Texas? Yes. So this is what we're talking about, the future. We're not talking about the past.
I know we are.
We have to bring up the past, or else there are no other facts to cite except for what's happened in the past.
Sure. And I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying to some degree now the past facts, they're starting to become a little bit more irrelevant when you have teams like USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, maybe coming up Notre Dame, Florida State, and other possible things joining the Big Ten. Is the SEC also looking to add more? I don't know. They seem pretty much against it, but that could change pretty quickly. So the stats change to some degree, and the future changes. And we're seeing at places like Wisconsin and Nebraska, I think they're finally starting to embrace that you can't just play Big Ten football anymore. That's maybe something folks on the outside don't understand is in the Big Ten, for the longest time, we didn't really care about others. We had ourselves, we had the Rose Bowl. Ohio State kind of became this champion of going out and playing against everyone else. And I think everyone got comfortable in that. But I think that comfort is ending. And if not by choice, it's going to be forced upon them by these other schools that are coming in right now.
Yeah, so I generally agree with what you're saying. I do think that when you talk about styles, you can also impact others and force them to play your style. So you can become a tough matchup. You don't necessarily need to completely, Wisconsin, it depends what we're considering the standard to be. If we want Wisconsin to be a Big Ten team that's going to win 10 games and win bowl games and finish in the top 15 in the country, then they certainly have been able to do that playing Wisconsin football. If we want them to play for national championships, then I would say more importantly than style of play is recruiting. They can't recruit at the level that they've recruited their entire history and play for national championships. More so than style of play, I think, is the issue, recruiting.
I agree with you, but I also think style of play helps with that because now you're talking about what what recruits are we looking to get? Are they going to want a style of play that showcases them more? I mean, Wisconsin football showcases certain players on the field really well. If you want to be a stud offensive lineman, go there. If you want to be a running back that actually gets looked at, go there. They've had just successful running back after running back come out of there. What you don't see coming out of there are quarterbacks. What you don't see coming out of there a lot are receivers. So by throwing that into the offense, I'm not saying get rid of all the old, but add in, and that's what I think Luke Fickell is doing. You now broaden the spectrum of recruits that would actually be interested in you.
Yeah,
so that's where I think that they're going.
Agree with you.
And like Rule, I think he's going to do the same thing in Nebraska. And these guys got money. You know, a lot of recruits now looking at facilities and money, just like was said. Rule with Nebraska, they will provide all of that. They'll provide you facilities. They'll have NIL money for guys. And you'll have someone that I think will probably have them playing pretty well on both sides of the ball. So I think it's all kind of coming together at the right time for the Big Ten. We don't know until we know, of course. But I do think the difference between the two conferences is starting to close, even if just by a little bit.
I would agree.
So,
all right,
that's where we're at that. Appreciate it, man. Good talking to you again. Have yourself a good one.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I want to remind everyone we've got an Amazon link. We do. Believe it. If you've not heard this before, I would love to talk about it for like an hour. But yes, we've got an Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. So please check out the Amazon link and use it. You will help us grow the channel, and you will be doing the same exact shopping and have the same experience. And there's nothing different. And if there is something different, if you try the Amazon link and it's a pain or whatever, I don't know what the problems would be, because I've checked this with like 15, 20 people. And they say it's exactly the same, then please let me know. It's just like our merchandise. Look at our merchandise. If you have an issue with any of the merchandise, we want to know. I don't want to put stuff out there that's not quality. So please let us know about the merchandise as well. But we've heard good things about the merchandise. And so we want to make sure that your experience here with the Voice of College Football, regardless of whether it's just the talking or it's the merchandise or the Amazon link, everything involved is first rate. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. The real MVP's here.
Hello, Mark. How you doing this evening?
I am doing well. What's going on?
I'm doing good. I guess the SEC just is no longer the best conference because they added in Oregon, a team that couldn't even hold a candle against Georgia. So I guess we just need to shut it down. I guess we should just cancel football for this season and going forward in the SEC.
Well, not this season. You should cancel in 2024.
You're right. We'll just have one go around the track as a celebration, probably win the national championship for the 5th straight year. But, you know, I've seen all the excuses, Mark, in the chat. The weather, the SEC's only got 3 teams in there. I mean, my gosh, Mark, I don't care if it's 2 inches of snow. Georgia's still going to put Michigan on skates probably, okay? I'm sorry. Georgia's just more talented than you all. I can't help it. LSU's just more talented. Alabama gets better players. I can't help that. Go out and beat the SEC on the football field if you want to claim you're the best. And they haven't done that recently.
Yeah, recently meaning a long, long time, 15 years. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I know.
The only thing I'll say about the typical Big Ten fan when it comes to the weather is it's ludicrous to bring up weather when it comes to football, one way or the other, whether you want to whine about your team losing because they're in the snow, or the reversal here that you want to say, well, you can't play in cold weather or in the snow. Really, do you want inclement weather to determine a football game? And that is the reason why a game is decided a certain way. So when it happens, I don't want it to be used as an excuse. When there is bad weather, rain, wind, sleet, snow, cold, I don't want anyone complaining about it. So I would want to see the SEC compete under those conditions more than they do. because that is part of the game in certain parts of the country, and they have avoided that largely. I'm trying to think, when is the last time an SEC team played in cold weather? I would never. I don't know when that would have been. So, like, I don't think that should be something that Big Ten fans should say, oh, well, you never play in the cold weather. That means you're not as good as us. And like these results would have just flipped just because automatically game results change going from 70 degrees to 35 degrees. Well, that's pathetic and ridiculous. And that's horrible. The SEC is the best conference. They win the games on the field. It's just not even debatable. However, I would like to see them have to play the game of football in some challenging weather conditions once in a while. I
would like to see it too. That way I don't have to hear this excuse.
I think I've got about as good a recollection of college football as anybody in regards to what games were played under what conditions. Somebody out there, let me know. And I'm not talking about rain. I'm not saying it was 68 degrees and rain and both SEC teams played, the Florida-Georgia game was played in some, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about cold weather.
I assume Kentucky's probably had one of them because Kentucky's pretty far north in the country.
Yes, and they were playing other SEC teams. That's the point.
Yeah,
somebody's got to win that game. Somebody's going to win. No, I'm talking about playing teams outside the conference when the weather's bad.
Right. But apparently, if you had 2 inches of snow or the wind's too loud or something like that, yes. It would just completely change the outcome of the game.
Yes, you're right. You are totally right. That's a big excuse, and it's stupid, and it's unfounded. However, I would like to see some games played. Okay, where do we have here? John is letting us know LSU played an Independence Bowl game in the snow about 30 years ago. There you go. This proves my point. Yes, Mississippi State and Texas A&M played even more recent than that, an Independence Bowl game, I think in 2000 in a driving snowstorm. But we got to go back 20 or 30 years. So I hope I'm driving my point correctly, that if you can't win the game under perfect weather conditions, then you don't have the better football team. Then if you need some kind of help by inclement weather, then that's your pathetic excuse of a competitor to say, well, it was 75 degrees and sunny and we need it to be like 13 degrees so people can't feel the football and it's hard as a rock because we need some kind of aid to help us win games. So yes, I am completely on board with you there. I'm just saying, since weather is part of the sport on occasion, I would like to see the SEC have to play under those conditions a couple times a year. 2 games. Give me 2 games a year. Daryl, you with us? I think we lost a reel. All right. Well, we have lost a real MVP. Call back if you'd like to reel. We will move it on here to Michigan man Mike. Mike, how you doing?
I can't complain, Mark. How you doing?
Did my rant make any sense?
Yeah, I think I kind of like the weather. I don't think every game should be 75 and sunny.
And I didn't see that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know some people seem to think it, but I mean, I like it because I was making the comment in the chat. Everything's all great until Green Bay wins the NFC. So if you have to go up and you have to play in a Lambeau or a Soldier Field or a Rich State or whatever they call it in Buffalo now, all the coddling from the SEC weather is not going to really help you. So you kind of have to learn how to play in the elements.
Well, I'm going to swing back over to the SEC side. Would it be unfair to expect them to play in those elements if they never play in them?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think the Big Ten recruiting should be better, because you're getting a more accurate feel of what I mean, if you have professional aspirations, playing in the Big Ten will give you a better feel about what you can expect at the next level.
Yes. Although, let's also understand that we can come up with a zillion examples of players who played in the SEC or Southern California who went to cold weather teams and turned out to be just fine. Jim Kelly did not want to sign with the Buffalo Bills out of college because it was Buffalo. But then when the USFL folded, guess what happened? He had to play for the Buffalo Bills, and then he loved it, and he was there forever. Brett Favre, Southern Mississippi, never saw a snowflake, and he turns into one of the great cold weather quarterbacks of all time. Bart Starr, Alabama, Green Bay Packers.
But you can also get spoiled. I mean, Marino played in Pitt. It gets plenty cold in Pitt, but once he went to Miami, he couldn't handle cold weather. I mean, the Buffalo Bills had his number, and they were a better team, but Miami under Marino was not a terrible team. He didn't have a lot of help around him, but all that Miami weather spoiled him. And just a quick question, I have to ask this on your SEC. Why is Tennessee 5? Can you make sense of that for me?
This is not a historic ranking. Well, okay. So where should they be? Let's start there.
Okay, well, I'm trying to think of what the entire rank 1 to 4, 1 to whatever it was.
I am trying to match up the Big Ten and the SEC and somewhat rank the programs as they stand right now. Yes, I understand Michigan has an argument to be number 1. Of course, they've won the conference and won the game. But I'm also looking at recent past. I'm looking at the current team. I'm looking at the ceiling. That's what Tennessee has, is a ceiling, and they have shown that. So Mississippi State, I believe, has a better football record the last 10 years than Texas does. Mississippi State does.
Mississippi State was ranked 1 during the Dak Prescott years for a week.
But my point is that if we're just going strictly by on-field success, Mississippi State is a better program than Texas does right now. They had a better record last year. They've had a better record for the last 10 years, but Texas can win national championships. Mississippi State can't come anywhere close. So that has to factor into too.
Even if you're going by recent, before this, in very recent years, Tennessee was dog crap.
Sure, I understand that.
They were winless in the SEC, what 6-7 years ago?
Yeah, 6 or 7 years ago. That is totally off my radar in making these rankings.
Because I'm just kind of wondering how Tennessee gets a top 5 bid. They had one good year last year, but I see no evidence of them being able to.
Because I looked at the programs underneath and I thought, yeah, they're better than all these other programs right this second. They have a blue blood ceiling.
I guess I just see Tennessee as kind of a 1-year flash in the pan, like 2019 Michigan State. Back before they start regressing to the mean.
2021 Michigan.
Sorry,
State.
2021.
But Michigan State's not a flash in the pan. Now they might be under Mel Tucker, but Michigan State in the last 10 years has finished in the top 10 3 times. And won Rose Bowls and Cotton Bowls.
Yeah, wow. I think I'm guessing a lot of this is they kind of peaked with D'Antonio. Mel Tucker had a Kenneth Walker year, but other than that, they're really not going to be all that high.
Well, he's only had one other season, full season there. So for as much as we want to pile on Mel Tucker.
Well, do you expect Michigan State to do much this year?
No, but I have Michigan State as the 9th best program in the Big Ten. I believe that's what the ranking was. And I originally had them lower than that. Then I thought, no, they max out much higher than Minnesota. They've maxed out in the last 25 years much higher than UCLA. And I almost ranked them ahead of Iowa, although Iowa's a much more consistent program.
You see, the UCLA thing, I guess I could probably see UCLA above Michigan State. But, yeah, I think Michigan State's right about where they need. But one thing I'm thinking is that I want to see where we rank the Big Ten versus the SEC after this year, because it looks like the Big Ten might be on a little bit of an upswing, but I see the SEC is kind of dropping down this year. Alabama is not going to be as good this year. Tennessee is not going to be as good this year. Georgia is what it is. LSU, they're going to be up there, but a lot of these teams in the top 5, 6 of the SEC, I expect them to have down years. Specifically Alabama. I mean, there's a lot of people talking like, now I don't know if this is Bama fatigue or Bama hatred, but there's a lot of people talking 8-4 or 9-3 for Alabama. Because they're this might be the worst wide receiver room Saban's ever had.
Yeah.
There's a huge question. Yeah, huge. Well, obviously the question mark at quarterback. Who's their pass rushers going to be this year?
Yeah, I don't know. That roster is still loaded.
Well, it's Alabama. It's not going to be barren. But I mean, I see them as kind of stepping down a notch. There's going to be more distance between Georgia and Alabama this coming season.
I have to have the demise of the SEC played out in front of me. I've got to see the games actually played and see them lose.
And plus,
hasn't happened.
The Big Ten is getting an influx of named quarterbacks from other conferences. Jeff Sims comes over, Hudson Card comes over. I don't know. I think Mordecai, the jury's still out, but I like to see what happens. And plus, I think as far as a coaching standpoint, we might have the best stable of coaches in the conference-wise in the country.
That's a interesting call right there.
I mean, outside of Smart and Saban.
Who are your top 5 coaches in the Big Ten?
Well, besides the obvious one, I would say
Ryan Day.
Yeah, you're funny. Yeah, I will give him a number 2 spot though, because
with the best record.
I mean, take out the 2 games from Michigan. He's still 31-1, or no, 30. I don't think he's lost a conference game other than Michigan, has he? So he's 31-2
in the Big Ten. Yeah, whatever in 2 in the Big Ten. He's 45-6.
Yeah. So I mean, under normal circumstances, I'd put him at 1, but how much of that can he benefit from? Really goes to Urban.
Sure, but now we're far past that.
Right.
Some people would argue that he corrected some things that weren't where they should be under Urban Meyer.
Well,
anyway.
Okay, so I would say Bielema should be up there. I would say Fickle should be up there. I'd say Rule should be up there. I'd say Franklin should be up there. I even throw it to Loxley. I mean, these are coaches that I would put against. I would say everybody in the SEC except for the 2 obvious ones, and Stoops maybe.
Brian Kelly, Jimbo Fisher.
Oh no, not Jimbo.
A good coach. Lane Kiffin.
Well, Kiffin doesn't play defense. I'm not much on Jimbo Fisher. I think that A&M
than you may think. Shane Beamer. Yeah, I'd have to see the list side by side, but I would side with the Big Ten head coaches. I'm with you on that. Although the top 2 are.
Yeah. Saban Smart. I mean, yeah, they have that. You can't take that away from him.
Brian Kelly has had a career as good as Jim Harbaugh.
I want to see long term, if he stays around, what Brian Kelly does at LSU.
Well, the early indications are pretty good.
I mean, it starts off pretty good, but I don't know. But I think that I'm hoping that after this season, if the chips fall where they do, I think, especially if Michigan or, God forbid, Ohio State can win a national championship this year, I think we can have a real discussion on who the top conference is post-2023. I think the gap is closing.
Oh, I think it's closing too, but it's closing because of the teams that were added going forward.
Yeah, and I say a lot of this is because the Big Ten is kind of coming up, but I think more of it is I think a lot of the teams in the SEC are kind of falling down a little bit. Like I said, I consider Tennessee a 1-year wonder. See a lot too much with Bama. Bama looks like they're on the decline, and I don't know.
How do we know that Tennessee's a 1-year wonder?
Well, do you really think that Joe Milton can even come close to what Hendon Hooker does?
I'm not judging a program based on who the quarterback is one season. I think Tennessee's going to be just fine under Josh Heupel.
Are they going to find some sort of defense this year? Because they didn't have it last year.
Yes, they will have a better defense this year, and then next year they're recruiting well. And we need to understand that if this is a enormous if the Big Ten wins a national championship this year, I'm not going to get on here and say necessarily that the Big Ten's the best conference because they won a national championship, because then the Big Ten or the SEC has obviously done that a million times. It's going to be, again, an evaluation of the entire conference, not just who won the national championship.
Well, I mean, the big step that SEC has over the Big Ten is that their peak is better than our peak because they won the national.
Better too. The middle's always been decidedly better.
I guess my question is, what middle teams, what do you compare with middle teams for Big Ten and middle teams for SEC?
South Carolina, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, those teams against
like the Iowas and the Wisconsins and the Marylands. And
yeah, again, it's tough to really discuss without a graphic representation, but anytime I've ever matched the SEC and the Big Ten, once I get to about 4 or 5, then the SEC's continues to be really thick with good teams for another 5 or 6 spots, while the Big Ten used to have to start grabbing a Michigan State who's really not that good, or an Illinois. I know that they had a good season last year, but I'm talking in generalities, or Purdue or whomever. It thins out. And look at the bottom 3 in the Big Ten. They're just terrible.
Okay, now the bottom, I would say that Vanderbilt and Missouri are better than Northwestern and Indiana.
Yeah, Northwestern, Indiana, Rutgers. So if you take those 3 and you take the 3 worst in the SEC, I don't even know who those 3 worst are. I guess Missouri is number 2, and you're going to take Florida or somebody like that. Then that
at this point probably Auburn.
That's a big difference.
Well,
Auburn would slap those 3 teams around silly. It's just not.
I'm not. I mean, I would say not now during the Hugh Freeze era, but during the Brian Harsin era, I think that would be a good matchup.
Auburn against Rutgers, Northwestern, and Indiana?
No, not Northwestern and Indiana, no. But I think Auburn, Rutgers would be closer than you think.
I would be willing to put a sizable amount on Auburn under Brian Harsin against Rutgers.
I mean, you got to figure he got chased out of town pretty quickly last time around.
I know he did. He also was 6-2 when his quarterback was healthy, Bo Nix. I don't know. My goodness, the more I think about that, Bo Nix and Auburn, the last season of Brian Harsin's stay against Rutgers.
Well,
that's a 3-touchdown game. It's not even.
Well, they were calling for Bo Nix's head. Yeah. Back when he was playing.
Mike, please. You're taking this. Bo Nix against any Rutgers quarterback. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you compare, even with him being down, if you compare Bo Nix to, was it Wimsatt? Yeah, okay, I'll say Bo Nix is obviously the best quarterback, but I would say Rutgers has a defensive advantage over Auburn.
No.
I mean, I think Auburn would. They would either. It would either be a close game or Auburn would win, but I don't think it would be no 3-touchdown rout.
Yeah. Well,
And
I don't agree.
maybe this is just me
Yeah.
through some sort of anti-SEC bias. I mean, we can chalk up to that if you want.
Well, we've drifted into matching up Auburn and Rutgers from 2 years ago. So, anything else, Mike?
Nah, that's all. Thanks for having me, Mark.
I appreciate it, Mike. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
All right, we'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Buckeye Mike. So we had Michigan Mike. We got Buckeye Mike joining us tonight. What's going on, Mike? Hello. Hello, Mike.
I'm here. Sorry. Oh. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Good. Sorry, I'm using my phone. I dropped my phone. How you doing?
Doing just fine, Mike. What's up?
So I think most Big Ten fans can sadly admit that SEC is currently overall better. I mean, you just did the layout for us, and it was staring us right in the face. Yeah, I don't know. As far as what Mike was saying, that was just kind of crazy. Having to go back like that. You know, I do think that some of these lower tier Big Ten teams will kind of figure it out. You know, I was looking over. Now I'm probably going to sound like the crazy one. I was looking over.
Be careful, Mike. I might be ready to pounce.
The defensive rankings from last year, and just looking over that, I think Rutgers could have the potential. I don't know how far up. I don't think it'd likely be very far up. But Rutgers, for example, finished 13th, I believe, overall defense in the Big Ten. I think that defense could move up from 13th this year. I think they could finish.
Do you think that Rutgers had the 13th best defense in the country last year?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And they earned that statistic. You know, they played the games and played well most of their games. So I'm not completely discrediting their defense, that it was awful. It was not awful. It was solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, you know, the one that doesn't surprise me, and I don't think will go anywhere. I think it said Northwestern finished last defensively, and it was weird or kind of funny too, because I think Rutgers finished 13th on offense too. So I mean, I don't know. I feel like Rutgers could have the pieces to, I think, overall finish better than they did last year. And of course, you know, that's what you want. It's just a matter of how much better is that defense finish. Because I really do feel like the defense is a little bit stronger than last year.
Okay.
And since we're talking about Rutgers,
wow,
or at least I am.
Yes. Why does Rutgers have a better defense this year than last year?
I don't know. I feel like some of it is the schedule. I kind of feel like.
Whoa. Mike, I'm not letting you get away with this. You know, I'm going to be tough on you here. Rutgers has a better defense because of their schedule.
Well, no, what I'm saying is I think the
better defense
helps favor
gotcha.
Improving the defense. You know, I think I think to your point with the graphics, I think that, where the teams are placed according to the way you saw it seems about right, on both sides. I think, there could be arguments, like you said, for one or the other. And I think it's kind of interesting how pretty evenly across the board the bottom half is. And the funny thing to me is, you talk to SEC fans, mostly outside of here, that they feel like their teams overall from top to bottom are just better. And that may be the case most of the time. But I think that it's a lot closer when you compare the lower tier Big Ten or ACC teams to the lower tier SEC teams. I do think they still have the advantage or the edge, but I think that gap is closer, and I think the gap overall between the Big Ten and the SEC is closing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so last thing I just want to say, everybody use the Amazon link. That's a big key here. And I don't believe our likes are around the same as the number of people viewing in here. So please hit the like button. Help Mark out any way you can.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for calling tonight. And I appreciate you supporting the channel and encouraging everyone to do likewise.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. Have a good night.
You too.
Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. So when I get around to it, which needs to be soon, we have channel changes, programming changes, channel restructuring here at the Voice of College Football Network. So I will release that video here in the next couple of days. There's been so much with realignment that I've not gotten a chance to map that out. But channel changes here at the Voice of College Football. What you need to know right now is we've got a new SEC channel. I have left the link there in the chat. And we've got a new Big 12 channel. And we've got a ton of videos on the SEC channel already. New Big 12 channel as well. So keep it locked in here at the Voice of College Football. But yes, we will have a restructuring of channels starting the first day of September. And so we need you guys to get on board and please support our new channels. All right, let's keep it moving. We got Wes on the line. Wes, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I got you just fine.
Okay. I've been listening. I got a lot of things I want to talk about here. First, weather. Let's talk about the weather.
Yes.
When's the last time there was a driving snowstorm in a Big Ten game in November?
Depends what you consider a driving snowstorm. Yes, I make this statement quite a bit when we talk about like Big Ten. Some Big Ten fans jumped on USC when they first were announced to have joined, that they don't know what they're going to meet in November. Yes, the weather is overplayed. The weather in the Midwest in September is beautiful. In October, it's generally beautiful. And then it starts to obviously plummet. And we were talking about different locations that range all the way from Columbus, Ohio, and College Park, Maryland, all the way up to Minneapolis. And then once really you see the first semblance of weather-related games, you can always you could have a rainstorm the first week of the season, of course, but I'm talking about cold weather the last 2 weekends of the season. And what I would consider growing up in Ohio my whole life, a driving snowstorm, it's extremely rare.
I tend to agree with you. It gets cold, don't get me wrong. And you might have some teams that aren't used to that. But even if it's a driving snowstorm, it impacts both teams.
I apologize, sir. We're going to put you on hold for 2 seconds, Wes.
Yeah.
Because we had somebody just claim in the chat that I timed them out. I've not timed anyone out in like a year. So whatever happened there, the biscuit, I never timed you out. So I don't know what that's all about, but I did not time you out. And if somebody else timed you out, that's a moderator, they may have had a good reason why. And so if you have an issue with it, please hit me up, MarkRogersTV at Gmail, but I did not time anyone out. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Wes. Get back to the weather theme.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. In my experience, kind of in the Big Ten area, it gets cold in November. You might get some rain, something like that. It's not a big deal. I don't think any team's going to really struggle with it. It may be a little bit of an issue for somebody. If Miami comes up in November and plays, okay, maybe it hurts them, but I agree with you. It's overblown.
Yeah, it's way overblown. The average temperature the last weekend of November in Columbus, Ohio is like 58 degrees. Now, again, Columbus is on the lower end of the Big Ten, and you start to see that hit more Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis.
Well, Minneapolis has a dome, or Minnesota has a dome, I think, right?
No.
Oh, I thought they did. Wisconsin,
they
Wisconsin's
did until
different.
about 10 years ago?
Okay.
12, 13 years ago, whenever that place opened, the TCB, what's the bank? Whatever the name of it is.
Yeah. All right. So, I just want to bring the weather up and say it's completely overblown. If it's horrible, it's bad for both teams, right? So what I really wanted to talk to you about is the next couple of teams potentially that the Big Ten would want to bring in.
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. And now I'm going to assume that GOR for the ACC is off the table. Okay.
Okay.
So what does the Big Ten want? They want money. They want eyeballs, blah, blah, blah. Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Atlanta's a huge market. Georgia Tech's not a competitive program. It's
not
a
right
good
this
school.
second.
It's correct. It's a good school, but it brings in a lot of eyeballs. What do you think about that?
Oh, I've posted videos on Georgia Tech and the Big Ten.
Okay.
And included them in a comparison with North Carolina, Virginia, and others.
Yeah, those make no sense.
Yes,
in
Atlanta and Houston, I believe, are the two most dense football player populations headed to the NFL than any two metropolitan areas in America. So, yes, there's plenty of football players there in Atlanta. And I've always said that's what the Big Ten checks all the boxes, except there aren't enough football players in the footprint. They've got to go outside the footprint. Well, if they had Georgia Tech, and people scoff at Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech has not been a football power basically in any of our lifetimes consistently, but they've been a 7-5, 8-4 team for most of my lifetime. And until about 4 or 5 years ago, that's what they were. And they went to an ACC championship game in 2014. And during the first 10 or 12 years of the new formed ACC, they were going to as many conference championship games as Florida State and Virginia Tech were.
Yeah, I agree. They have potential. I think it would be a good get for the Big Ten. So now I'm going to kind of keep it on the money topic here. USC, definitely a big deal for the Big Ten. But why USC and UCLA?
I'm probably not best to answer that from more of a technical standpoint, because I think there are aspects of contracts and just legalities and so forth and so on in academic, congruence. But that's their playing partner. USC doesn't want to You talk about an outlier. They would be an outlier unlike anybody else in America if they were playing in the Big Ten by themselves. And UCLA is a great school with a great sports tradition and a great football tradition. It's a long time ago. That has all sorts of great.
UCLA fits with the Big Ten in general, I believe. Yes. From that standpoint. But current day, USC is that's the big boy.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no comparison. Yes.
All right. And then Washington and Oregon. If it was me, I would have picked one. But it makes a lot of sense now having those 4 teams out there. And then you put Nebraska, which isn't that far away. Okay. And my last question is, assuming they stay at the 18 teams, what would your ideal scheduling situation be with 18 teams? I feel like the Big Ten had a good plan with 16. 18 kind of messes things up.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to dust off a video I did 3 or 4 months ago and repackage it because I don't know that I'm going to improve upon it in regards to at least my thought, not saying that people don't have other ideas or better ideas. But with those 4 being on the West Coast, I wouldn't go to divisions, like 9-team divisions. I wouldn't want to mix the far West Coast teams with anyone in the Midwest. They could be their own division. And then you go with 4 divisions of 5, 5, 4, and 4 teams. And it works out extremely well. Now, in terms of the schedule, let's see, you would either play 3 or 4 division games, and then you would have to play 5 or 6 non-division games. And you, of course, rotate those. Again, I don't have the exact layout, but that's general.
Yeah, but you're talking about, like, say, 4 divisions that are slightly imbalanced.
Yes. Yeah, I even worked out the records of those teams in the last 5 years and worked it out. So let's say you've got Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA. That's the easy one. Then the other one was like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa,
Nebraska,
maybe there,
Illinois,
maybe
Indiana.
I forget how I had that. Then Illinois, Indiana, Michigan State. Well, it's easier to go all the way east. You'd have Maryland, Rutgers, Penn State, Ohio State. I forget how I had it laid out, but I had 2 5s and 2 4s.
Yeah, no, that's totally reasonable. That's totally reasonable. Okay. No, that's those are big things I want to talk about. Aside from you said any college football question. So what's your opinion on Northwestern's special teams?
If you give me about 3 minutes, I will regurgitate what Phil Steele had to say about Northwestern special teams. I can read it right from his magazine that's laying right in front of me. I can do that, but that's the best I can do. I have not delved into Northwestern special teams. My apologies.
That was a joke.
Everyone can make fun of me in the chat as not knowing everything. Yes, Northwestern special teams. I assume it's awful. Although they could have the best special teams in America and we wouldn't know it because except for punting every, 3 and out, who would know?
Exactly. So,
good stuff, Wes.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. And there's much expected from this next call. There is much expected because I usually get some really intriguing nugget that maybe only I will appreciate from the football past. And we've got Yakov here. Yakov, what's going on?
Mark, I have something for you in that, in regards to that. I might save that toward my third. I have 3 things I wanted to say, and the third will very much fit what you're talking about.
Excellent.
And I think it's humorous as well. Mark, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm going to make a provocative statement. I'm sorry. I want to apologize. Usually I do chat. I super chat into the Ohio State show. The most recent one, I wasn't available.
It's quite all right. Yeah,
we'll make it up next time.
They are all recorded and there for your viewing pleasure at any
time.
I
watched it and I hit like. I make sure I help you out in that regard.
It's very kind of you. I appreciate that. Everybody listen up. See, if you like what we do here at the Voice of College Football, even if you don't agree with me, at least hit the like button. We appreciate that.
Everyone should certainly do that. That's the least they can do, Mark. Mark, I'd like to I think I'm going to make a provocative statement to you in regards to the Big Ten / SEC. What is that? Big Ten SEC and the upcoming 12 team playoff. Very good. Okay.
Somebody wants a Georgia helmet up front. The Biscuit wants a Georgia, and of course they've earned it. So there we go.
Yeah, if anyone should be up front, it should be Georgia. But Mark, I think that under the SEC, and the Big Ten, and along with their TV partners, should make the following power play. And I'm not really a power play type of guy, if you can tell that from my personality, but I think both the leagues should say in this upcoming 12-team playoff, there are top 4 teams get in. 8 of the 12 spots should be reserved for the Big Ten / SEC. And the ACC, the Big 12, maybe the AAC, and whoever else, they can fight over the next 4. I believe that would be a true representation of the best of college football. And I think if they both put their foot down and say this is what it is, or we're just going to make our own playoff, the SEC against the Big Ten, then I think the other leagues will be forced to accept that.
I understand your point. I get where you're going with that. And for as much as I don't like the committee, if we have entrusted them to make the selections, is there a reason we would put, what if for whatever reason, like the Pac-12 this past season in 2022, to me was the most improved conference in America. If we put those artificial guardrails on it, we're not letting the season dictate or determine.
I guess I just feel, Mark, that it's going to be harder to come in 4th place in the Big Ten than to come in 2nd place in the ACC.
Oh, absolutely.
Or the Big 12.
And the committee figured that out.
It'll be harder to come in 4th place there than it will be in the AAC. So that's why I think those are one-team leagues.
And the committee is supposed to be able to determine that.
I hope so. I hope they realize that it's harder to go 9-3 in the Big Ten or the ACC or the SEC than it is to go 10-2, maybe even 11-1 in those other leagues.
Well, there have been 3 occasions in which a league has placed 2 teams in the playoff in 9 years, and all 3 have been SEC and Big Ten. Well,
right.
Somebody's going to call me on this one. An asterisk for 2020, Notre Dame was in the league 1 year and they made the playoff with Clemson. Okay.
Right. Okay. And that's my point. Yeah, that's correct. Okay. Well, Mark, I guess I just wanted to say that as far, I think we kind of, I just happen to feel that that's how, if those leagues really put said this is what it's going to be, I think the Big 12 and the ACC would have no choice but to capitulate and say, okay, you guys get 4 teams, 8 of the 12 are you 2, and we'll fight over the 4 remaining spots. Maybe we'll be number 1 spot, depending on how we're finished, but we'll divvy up the 4. You guys could have 8.
I'm sorry to disagree with you, Yakov. I understand where you're going, and I get it. I'm not saying it's nonsensical because it makes sense. I just don't want. I want the season to determine. I don't want to go into any season with a preconceived idea about who's good and who's not good.
Right. Well, that's why I preface it by saying a provocative statement there. And Mark, before I get to my thing that you most want to hear, I had an idea for the Big Ten as far as the 4 new West Coast teams. Mark, what do you think about to save some travel time? That Oregon and Washington, and USC and UCLA each play home and homes every year. However, only one of those games will be the Big Ten game. The other one will be a out of conference game. Save some travel, could be some intrigue. I was just thinking the other day, so I'm gonna ask Mark, what about home and homes? Keep it easy out, especially UCLA and USC. That's like, take an Uber. But and the other one's pretty close as well. Any interest in that idea?
Why does anyone have any? All of those are good football matchups, all of them. But is there any extra interest in watching Washington and UCLA play again after they already played?
Oh, no, I meant USC and UCLA play home and home, and Washington and Oregon.
Not all of them.
No, not all. That's too much.
Just
that's
that
too much.
pairing.
Right, just those two. And only one counts as a Big Ten game. The other one's.
Well, then you get into a controversy over, okay, one of them's going to be deemed a conference game, and then the other one's not. I don't know that we need to be that. I don't know that we need to be that concerned with their travel. They can work out their own travel in non-conference play. USC can go play Fresno State and play San Jose State and play Arizona State and Arizona and all these other schools that are within their region.
Okay.
If they want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I hear you say, Mark. Again, that's why I called it a provocative statement. I didn't think it's so deep. I just thought maybe I could help them with some travel and some expenses and
see, for me, because of the limited number of teams in college football, there are so many matchups that we never see. LSU and Michigan have been playing football for 120 years, and they've never played. That
right.
I don't want to see the same teams playing again and again and again and again.
Okay. Well, maybe they could bring that proposal to the TV partners if they don't see that as selling, getting more eyeballs. And obviously, if it's not going to do that, then they're not going to do it. I thought maybe it would be traveling. It would be helpful travel wise and maybe get some eyeballs. But if the UCLA and USC playing twice is not helpful TV revenue wise, then obviously there's no reason to do that.
How would you, as an Ohio State fan, see playing Michigan in a non-conference game?
It would probably be one of the most high. Let's say this year, Michigan and Ohio State played in, we'll call it week 0 in Columbus, and then the last game of the year was in Ann Arbor. They might be 2 of the 5 highest rated games of the year. No.
Well, that's because of who they are.
Yeah.
But how would you feel about one of the games not counting as a conference game?
Would it if I changed it and said they're both conference games, would that change your feeling of it? I said, okay, I'll concede that they can both be Big Ten games.
Then my argument would be, why are we playing another game against another conference opponent rather than
right?
We're gonna have 18 teams and 9 conference games. Therefore, there are 10 teams. Am I doing the math correctly? Whatever it is, 8 teams that you're not playing.
9 if you're playing. Yeah. Okay, that's right. Right. So, yes. Well, my provocative ideas were provocative, but they might not, come into play. And the third thing I'll tell you, Mark, this one, this is where you asked for me to, bring back the yesteryear. Mark, this happened on Facebook. There's something. I'm not a big Facebook user, but once in a while I do check in, and it comes with those lists of people you may know. And the top of my list, this is just 2 weeks ago, and I knew right away when I saw this, I was going to have to tell you about this, hopefully on air, Mark. Bernie Kosar came up in my list of people you may know. So I of course I wanted to write to him, not because he has anything to know about it, but I was going to say, hey, you signed something for me in 1986. I did write that to him, and he didn't respond. But I just wanted to tell you that I thought it was interesting that he came up. He was my favorite, Mark. If I had to say my all-time favorite athlete, I don't know if there was anyone I ever, for about 5 years, sometime starting around 1985 till maybe 1990, 91 or so. I don't think there'll ever be a athlete that I was more interested in than Bernie Kosar.
Really?
In the mid-'80s to the early 90s or so. And, my interest in the Browns at that time was like scale 1 to 10, maybe 11. Now it's maybe a 2. I'll watch the game, but I really don't care if they win or lose. But, so I know I usually bring up something a little more thought-provoking as far as, going back to yesteryear. But Bernie Kosar, of all people, came up with my people you may know list on Facebook just 2 weeks ago.
Gotcha. Well, there's some kind of a backdoor, some kind of connection there between people that
I thought maybe we'd have a common friend, but we did. And then shortly after that, Hanford Dixon came up there. and my people. And we actually did have one common friend, someone that lives in the Cleveland area that's a personal trainer. I don't know.
Okay.
But Hanford Dixon, one of the original founders of the Dog Pound, came up in my people you may know list. And I didn't contact him. I didn't have anything to say, but I had a thought about that name in particular in maybe 20 some years or so.
Dave is asking if we remember Brian Sipe. Well, of course we remember Brian Sipe. He won the MVP in 1980, and I could go on and on about Brian Sipe. But San
Mark,
Diego,
probably one of my first memories of I wasn't really paying attention because I was a little too young for the 81 game against the Raiders. I still remember it was a frigid day in Ohio, even down in Canton. I'm sure in Stowe it was cold that day, and I remember I was going in and outside. My mom was yelling at me to put on hat and everything, hat and jacket. And I do remember coming in, because again, I didn't have the attention at that point. I guess I was just short of 7. And I remember my dad, my great uncle, my grandfather slumped over right after the Red Right 88 play, right after the interception. I believe Lester Hayes?
No, Mike Davis.
Mike Davis. Oh, okay. And one of my first memories of football is my 3 members of my family slumped over as a result of that interception.
Lester Hayes sometimes gets credit because he led the NFL in interceptions that year.
Oh, Lester the Molester Hayes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're making me feel old because I was 12 and I clearly remember that game. I had no rooting interest. I was not a Browns fan, could care less who won the game. But for many of our Southern friends, when Yakov says it was frigid that day, that doesn't mean it was like 42. It was like, what was it, like 13 below?
Oh my gosh, Mark! It was icy that day too. A lot of precipitation. It was an extremely cold game. Extremely cold game. Yeah. Our neighbor went to the game, and I think I told you he said that his feet were still cold until July. It was a very cold game. Sure. They would have won that game. I think they would have hosted the AFC Championship game the following week.
Yes, they had the number 1 seed.
Right. That was a tough loss, Mark. Again, I'm happy that I was too young to feel it, to appreciate the loss at the time, the bitterness of such a loss. So I've gone, Mark, I'm going to end it here. I've gone from the Big Ten getting 12 teams, Big Ten getting 4 teams in, to talking about 1980 game and Bernie Kosar. But again, Mark, I always love talking to you, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the show.
Thank you, Yakov. Appreciate it.
Okay. Have a good.
That conversation with Yakov is actually reminding me that was one of my great memories as an NFL fan was that same day, because as a Cowboys fan, they were down 2 touchdowns to the Falcons with about 5 minutes left in the game. And Danny White hit Drew Pearson on 2 touchdown passes in the final 4 minutes to win in Atlanta at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. All right, let's catch up on the Super Chats. Then we'll get to Dr. C. Wes, thank you so much for the contribution there. That's very nice of you. Wes says, I forgot to ask, did you see the Pac-12 being the conference to implode? I would have picked the Big 12. So, wow. Want to do this question some justice. When the Big 12 lost Oklahoma and Texas, I, like anybody else that understands the situation, thought they need to act, because there were certain rumors out there that I didn't buy into, that the Big Ten would be looking at Iowa State or Kansas because of basketball and so forth. But they were teetering on a number at 8 where had they lost for whatever reason, and now we know that the Big 12 was protected to a certain degree by its mediocrity. Nobody really wanted any of those other schools. That had they dropped below that 8, and then all that solidarity becomes fear. You go from, okay, we're all in this together. Let's stay together. Let's, those nasty people at Texas and Oklahoma left our league, and shame on them. And we're together in this. Let's fight it through. To every school is going to look out for its own best interests. And if the league you think is on shaky ground, and then once it hits a certain threshold, it's going to collapse, just like we saw this week with the Pac-12. So the Big 12 was close to that, and they grabbed the 4 schools that I and others, I'm sure, recommended. Now, not based on our recommendations, but I thought that UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati were the 4 best and most attractive eligible schools, and they grabbed them and they stabilized the league. And now that they are expanding and becoming a force, the Pac-12, maybe pride comes before a fall. I know that that's what the good book tells us, so it's true. But maybe the Pac-12 is our best example of this in college football right now, because based on all reports, as this has been explained over the last 10 or 12 years, turning down the number of schools that they did, the Pac-12 could have been the first super conference. The Pac-12 could have kept expanding, and the Pac-12 could have sent they could have done, this is so ironic, the Pac-12, we know this now from many reports, that the Pac-12 could have done to the Big 12 what the Big 12 has done to the Pac-12. This summer's events could have went in reverse 2 summers ago. The Pac-12 was in that strong a position, and the Big 12 was that weak, and it changed that quickly. Now, the thought of that happening to the SEC and the Big Ten, they're wrapped up in money, and they're secure in so many different ways that that's not going to happen to them. But thank you so much for that contribution. All right, we've got Opie checking in here. We appreciate the contribution there. Didn't Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State complain about playing cold night games on NBC so much? That's a good point right there, that they moved them into domed stadiums. Also, doesn't the former Pac teams get most of the California recruits? Just asking. Okay, so yes, Ohio State. Well, let's start with this. The Big Ten did not play any night games in November up until this past season, and including this season until this contract kicks in. All the late night, when I say late night, primetime games in the Big Ten are in September and October, and they don't play night games because of the cold in the Big Ten in November. Well, we'll not go into the details because we had a long discussion about this on one of the Buckeyes live shows. But what happened was, why no one understood this, it was easy to see it play out, that if NBC signed a contract with the Big Ten to show primetime games, that somebody was going to have to play primetime games in November. And NBC's not interested in showing the Maryland-Indiana game in primetime in November. They want to show those 3 schools. So the first one on the docket is Penn State and Michigan State. And yes, that has been moved to Ford Field in Detroit. So good call by you, Opie. Correct. Also, doesn't the former Pac teams get most of the California recruits? Just asking. Most of them? Yes, the former Pac teams, USC and UCLA. Yes. Now will the current Big Ten teams be able to go out to California and sell themselves as being able to join one of the premier conferences in America? Yes, you're going to the Midwest. However, we will be traveling to USC and UCLA to play games, and they will be coming out here to play games. That remains to be seen. And Jimmy, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for the contribution. The ACC and Pac-12 have had teams more important than the conferences. With the Big 12, the conference is more important than any teams. You can look at it that way. That's a good way of putting it. Or you can just say that the Big 12 does not have any elite football products. The ACC has Clemson, Florida State, and to a lesser degree, Miami, and to a lesser degree, well, I'm not going to put North Carolina in that bucket, but those 3. And then, of course, the Pac had USC, Washington, Oregon. I'm not going to put Oregon and Washington in an elite category, but obviously they were very valuable for the Big Ten to pick off. And yes, the Big 12. After Oklahoma and Texas left, best Big Ten or Big 12 football product is what? The best program, the most valuable program in the Big 12 prior to this slew of additions this week. Oklahoma State, TCU, who is it? The Big 12 is going to hope that its champion can have a really strong year every year, because to look anywhere past its champion or number 2 team as being a really strong national team that can play at that level is not going to be reality. Meaning Oklahoma State has to cycle up and be the 2011 Oklahoma State team or the 2021 Oklahoma State team, and TCU has to cycle up and be the 2022 TCU team, and Baylor, they've cycled up a few times, 2013, 14, 21, and I don't even know if those teams would have been able to compete with the best teams in college football. Kansas State, they've been on the fringe of cycling up and being, and even those teams I just mentioned are not elite teams. They're really good teams, but man, there's going to be seasons. And Utah fits that category as well. It's Utah, it's TCU, Kansas State, and it's Oklahoma State. Those have been the schools that have barely touched elite status, kind of. Am I missing anyone? No. Cincinnati, not against that schedule. I know they went to the college football playoff, and I know Houston was really good with Ed Oliver and company 10 years ago. But Jimmy, it's a good point that you make right there. Badger and Bournemouth fan. Mark, I know you've mentioned this before, but do you think the Big Ten and SEC will block out Notre Dame from schedule in the future to force their hand? I want them to. I don't believe that they will. I don't see the Big Ten and the SEC cooperating. And would that still knock Notre Dame out? I guess Notre Dame, if let's say the conferences stay as they are currently constructed, Notre Dame would still have Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and those schools in the ACC to schedule. They would still have the Big 12 to schedule, even if they got blocked out by the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, their scheduling strength of schedule would be called under question, but I don't see it happening. I want them to. It's not Notre Dame's fault that they're allowed to be the complete aberration in the sport. But we are suffering from no commissioner and no governing body in all of this. Schedules being screwed up, Notre Dame being left to its own devices, the Pac-12's demise and obliteration. All this is because there's no governing body. And so each conference acts to its own best interests, and they should. Every conference commissioner is hired by the conference. For as much as I love college football and the sanctity and integrity and traditions and pageantry and everything that makes college football great, in addition to the play on the field, if I was hired as the Big Ten commissioner, I suddenly forget about everybody else in college football. They're not my concern. I am being paid a ton of money to build up the Big Ten brand and the coffers of the Big Ten as great as we possibly can be. And if we obliterated the rest of the sport and it was just a Big Ten national sport, then I've done my job, even though that's a horrible thing for the sport. All right. Should be an interesting conversation with our buddy Connor Johnson stepping in. Hey, Connor. Hello, Connor.
Hey, I'm here.
I'm here. Man?
I can't share in the same enthusiasm as you right now, but
enthusiasm for what? Am I sharing?
Dude, you sounded enthusiastic to talk to me, so I guess I shouldn't have.
Oh, I was just talking about how what a bad place the sport's in is what I was just talking
Yeah,
about.
I don't know if anything's going to be done to stop it or slow it down. I'm holding out hope that, first off, I'm representing the Forgotten Four, still a Power 5 conference in 2024. Power 4, they're not talking about the Power 4 conferences. We're
Did
talking
you come
about
up with that brand name?
No, I've seen it on Twitter.
Okay.
The Forgotten
That's
Four.
a good one. You guys should run with that.
Yeah. So I see a few options going forward. I'll just talk about our situation going forward. There are rumors, and I hate to spread the spreader of the rumor mill, that that commissioner of the Big 12 will be in Corvallis this week. I think he's visiting a bunch of schools. They're in talks to maybe go to 18. And the PAC is currently talking with both the AAC and the Mountain West. I think if we don't get an invite from the Big 12 soon, we have to start looking at other options. So another option, I think, would be Apple. If you look at the numbers, it's not as bad as Big 12 people will tell you. It was a $25 million base salary. So we were all thinking they get to 27, people stay, 26 if they're close. 25 was right there with the subs. It was going to be streaming. And contrary to what the schools will tell you, Oregon had a chance to save it in the last second. Oregon, it could have, it was all because ASU backed out and they kept Arizona out, and Utah was not going to go unless the other two did. It was Oregon in the 11th hour, and it was Fox. So we have good lawyers, Cal and Stanford, and Oregon State and Washington State. And there's grounds from Reese Davis said on this podcast from 1984, there was a lawsuit, Oklahoma Board of Regents versus the NCAA, for being forced out of media dollars. So, I wouldn't put that against them. It's all on Fox. It's always been Fox and ESPN. They're doing and the only reason I hope for Oregon State to the Big 12 is because us and Wazoo are the only two left in the Pacific time zone, and Stanford Cal, but they're not going to go to the Big 12, that Brett Yormark can grab to get the fourth time slot. And ESPN has been boxed out by Fox by taking USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. ESPN, the only route left is if they tell Brett Yormark, hey, we need you to grab Oregon State. You still want your UConn, we'll grab Oregon State, UConn. So there's some hope there, but I'm just pissed at Fox and Joel Klatz and YouTube. All the Fox people being like, sorry for it's on them. It's the most baloney I've seen, and I'm ready to quit the sport. If send me to the Mountain West tomorrow, I'll just be done. That's where I'll segue into my other idea, which would be the Forgotten Four plus the best from the Midwest and Mountain West, the best four from the Mountain West, and the best four from the AAC. There's already chatter that it's going on. I don't know how it would look. I've thought myself that the AAC is better, so I would maybe rather have three from the Mountain West: San Diego, Fresno, Boise. Stop there. Go to the AAC, get Memphis, SMU, Tulane, UCF, and my personal favorite is ECU. Grab the Pirates.
USF
and ECU. What did I say?
UCF.
Oh, okay. Yeah. USF. My bad.
Sure.
So I think that maybe that could get you 12, 15 mil from Apple. I don't know if people want to jump on board to that. But if you need subscribers, you need brands. So that's why Boise's in there. I know they don't have the market, but it's just going to be like, if we make the right moves, we can hold on to this Power 5 and this auto bid. And you take, right there, Boise, Fresno, SDSU, SMU, Tulane, Memphis, ECU, USF. Better than the Big 12. Just kidding. But it's respectable, and it is what it could be, and that would keep my interest in the sport. But the vibe's on right now. Our team, we're winning the Pac-12. Full stop. Like, we're pissed. The players know what's up. They're looking at this as like, oh, our only chance to get an invite somewhere is if we make the playoffs. That might not even be true. I'm just saying, like, that's the hope. And DJU looks like a real. I mean, he was in the spring. He didn't look that good, but he's big. I mean, now that he knows the system, I'm bullish. Last year in the Pac, which is kind of cool, win the Pac-12, which is also the irony. Like, if we won the Pac-12 and then we were relegated for the likes of Houston, UCF, Cincy, and BYU.
It's a business.
The business. We're getting the full business. And sports, I mean, you can't carry all the athletic programs we have, all those jobs. Like, people aren't realizing that when people play conference commissioners, like Corvallis, even like the bars in downtown Corvallis, like this affects the whole town. Obviously, the university, the student. I mean, a lot of students come here just because of being Power 5. Like, I know it's sad. Everybody thinks it's sad. We know it's sad. So I'm just trying to like push through. And first off, I'm mad at Fox, sue them, and then see what we can salvage.
I just wish that there were more top end teams in the Mountain West to join, because this just going all the way across country for that would be a bit odd, but it's already being done elsewhere, of course. But
who after those three though bring football relevance?
Yeah, that's it. That is it. Air Force,
State,
maybe.
No. Yeah, but Air Force never wanted to join the Power 5 all along. I mean, I guess so. Another route, if you're going to go to 14 from there, would then be Air Force and Navy. But for 12 at first, less dilutive, more money. Yeah, I mean, UNLV, we talk about their market. They don't have football fans, football team. Yeah, so Air Force and Navy would probably be the next two, I think, out of those two conferences.
Now, in terms of making a playoff going forward in a 12-team playoff, your chances of making the playoff is pretty similar.
It's a small window.
Well, I'm talking about two different scenarios. One would be being a group of 5. If Oregon State is relegated to a group of 5 status, then trying to be the best of the group of 5 versus winning that conference that you just constructed, and that conference only getting one spot.
Yeah, but for money, I mean, a group of 5, us going to the Mountain West or the AC. I mean, it's just not the only thing left to have the money and the resources to compete at that level, in my opinion, is to combine those two leagues with the Forgotten Four. And I started with the short window because, you know, how long can we keep Jonathan Smith? I mean, I know he's loyal, but and then, you know, we're going to see a bunch of players enter the transfer portal at the end of next year if unless something changes.
Sure.
There's upside 15, 20 years down the road when we're used to the money situation. We could be like Boise was, but the heartache of having to wait for that and to cheer for that. Like, I feel for these Memphis fans, SCSU fans, SMU fans that all want a seat at that table. And there is some solace, I guess, in now being a sought after Group 5 program. There is something, but I also share in that anguish of like, oh, they just want a seat at the table too. All these teams that either never had a chance or were forced out, Big East or WAC or whatever that may be. And I'm afraid that if we don't make the right moves in the next month to the end of the year to be into the Big 12 by 2024, then I don't want to. It's like the weighing of like, if I'm going to invest all of it and have a chance and have the hope, that heartache is worth it when your team loses to Oregon or whatever. But if there is no light at the end of the tunnel, I would rather remove myself entirely from the entire sport and just do something else, put all that energy elsewhere.
If we knew what eventually would happen with the top teams in the ACC, and this this is going to take a while to play out versus what you're talking about, where Oregon State really needs to act soon. Then there would be an opportunity to grab the rest of the ACC and merge it across country. And then you're talking a league with, some better football playing
get ahead of
schools.
it
Not
now.
great, but Boston
get ahead
College,
of it now
Syracuse,
and
Wake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather get ahead of it now and invite them now and just
Sure.
all of this to become wrapped in a bow now to give everybody an equal shot at having a seat at the dance. But waiting till 2036 for the ACC grant rights to go out, by then we're getting used to G5 money. We've gotten rid of a lot of our sports programs.
I'm not talking about all the way to 36. I'm talking about if Florida State in particular is going to push it this hard, maybe it takes 2, 3, 4 years before they get that litigation and money into a position where they can do what they need to do to get out.
Yeah, I mean, that was always kind of the end play when we would get this far in talking about it. And truthfully, this whole time, I've seen the writing on the wall. It's just been hope. It's that same hope of like, oh, I can go to the national championship. I had the same hope of like, oh, I might still be able to go to the national championship. So like, until the dust fully isn't settled yet, and there's either slight interest in Oregon State or the Big 12 fans are trolling us because us and the Utes were the most anti-Big 12 out of the Pac-12, the most loyal, and they're already hating on Utah. So they're either trolling us or there is legit interest. And I think the ESPN being boxed out by Fox late night window interest could be a real leverage point, but I'm not in those rooms. So,
well, as you mentioned, your Mark has made that statement about the time zone. And
endless. The most thing he said in talking about realignment is coast to coast and the Pacific time zone, the forward windows. And Arizona fans will tell you, oh, we have it for half the year. Arizona has it for like the first few weeks of football season. They don't have it at all for basketball season. And their legislature is voting to make them fully in the mountain time zone. So that doesn't really hold water.
And you're not going to achieve your goal based on one school either. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Oregon State, Washington State, if they really want basketball, Oregon State and Gonzaga. I mean, we would still play football, but then we would have a travel partner for basketball.
I wonder how the Big 12 looks at San Diego State in comparison to Wazoo and Oregon State.
They like basketball and they probably like the market.
Yeah.
They have to know that the fans in the football, the culture in football is still Oregon State. So I could see Oregon State, San Diego State. And this sucks for Wazoo because I would always lump myself in with Wazoo. It's just they're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Their athletic program is already in the negatives. You've seen their finances coming out. They already can't support what they have. And recent football success, like people are going to be surprised how good Oregon State is this year. I still think barely we reached national relevance last year, which is sad. But if you're thinking of elite football programs, and I know I use the elite word, and with Oregon State, a bunch of people will laugh at that. But if you think of a program that's recruiting in the 50s to 70s rankings wise, if you're thinking of a program that was 130 out of 131 just 5 years ago, we've had the same coaching staff and overhauled it all to the position where we forced Florida, the blue blood Florida, to kick a field goal just so that they wouldn't look bad and their streak wouldn't be broken. I don't know. I think the advisors and the other Big 12 presidents would be pressuring your Mark, hey, football makes money. If you really need basketball, grab San Diego State with them. They still have a football team. They're on the West Coast as well. It's just now up to our athletic department and the Forgotten Four, Cal, Stanford, and Wazoo to reach out and see what maybe other options can be.
The thing about San Diego State, Connor, though, is, and I don't expect Southern California football fans to become automatically captivated with San Diego State, but the NFL team did leave town. Now, I would guess that most of those fans stuck around because they're just up the coast in Los Angeles, and there's no presence college football presence in Southern California. So I do think that San Diego State, because of those two things, has a bit of an opportunity to increase their exposure.
I have one kicker. You're right on all of that, 100%. And I think they would probably do it. How much would they have to owe the Mountain West? We've been saying it. It was 17, now it's 34 million.
Yeah.
So why pay a school, even if at the half rate, you're paying them half rate for 15 million, and you got to pay the 34 million on top of that? Oregon State is free. And then if you're Yormark, you could wait and grab San Diego State at the cheaper cost. But that was part of the PAX issue the whole time. Adding them was this huge, twice the payout, and so now it's going to hurt them as well getting into the Big 12.
I still owe you a Oregon State versus the Big 12 video. I don't know that many of those games have been played in the last 10 or 20 years.
The Oklahoma State fans, we joke. We had it on Twitter Spaces and stuff. It's kind of fun. I don't know if it's as fun as your channel, but you can just hop on and all these people can talk. So Oklahoma State and Oregon State are already hopefully planning a Halloween orange and black game where all the students are in costumes, and the loser, Mike Gundy or Jonathan Smith, have to maybe we have to call. Maybe we drop the uppercase from our O in our logo, and we're just lowercase OSU or vice versa.
Oh, nobody's going to agree to that one.
No. Maybe
the fans, that'll be a thing with the fans. But
Jonathan Smith gets to shave Mike Gundy's mullet. Maybe one of them has to do something, wear a purple jersey. I don't know.
The mullet cutting would be, yes.
Yeah.
That would, oh,
televised.
Man. Oh, yes. We'd all watch that.
Yeah. You scoffed at my national brand baseball comment the other day, and I get it. But in the Southeast and in the Big 12, they really love their baseball.
No.
And
I scoffed at it in this way. College baseball, I love the sport of baseball. Used to be my favorite sport. I don't consider college baseball anybody to be a national brand, but within the college baseball community, I would never scoff at that because I don't know what's going on in college baseball. So, you know what I mean? I'm making a distinction between a national brand and then within the college baseball community, I'm sure that it is.
No, I get it. And I have a fun little stat here. Only 4 schools have made the Baseball College World Series.
Okay.
The men's basketball Elite 8.
Okay.
Had a 10-win football season over the past 5 seasons.
Okay. Well,
only
obviously
4 schools.
One's Oregon State. So I got to guess the other 3 with little knowledge of 2 of the sports. Who plays good baseball? Florida's not been that good in basketball recently.
One's SEC. Well, one's
Mike
SEC, one's
Michigan.
SEC. Yep. Michigan's one of them.
Michigan's one. So we've got 2 other ones, folks. Again, that's a 10-win football team. That's an Elite 8 basketball, and that's a
College World Series.
Mm-hmm. No, not Vanderbilt, obviously. Kentucky, ?
Nope, not Kentucky.
They've not made the College World Series. LSU not in men's basketball, have they? No. Tennessee.
One's current SEC. One's future SEC.
We got a Tennessee guess.
No, not Tennessee.
Florida, Oklahoma State. Shoot, everybody's I thought we would get it quick. So, man, I should have been thinking. Just there's not been that many 10-win football teams.
One was this past year was a 10-win football team.
10-win football team this past year.
Maybe actually the only one 9. So I don't know when they won this.
TCU's not gone to an Elite 8 in basketball. They've done the other 2. No, not Clemson's terrible.
Now you're making me nervous that my homework is wrong and that I was maybe wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure. I saw it on Twitter and I looked it all up to double
Well,
check.
shoot, College World Series teams come from the Pac-12 and the SEC generally. I'm going to say Alabama.
No, but close, as in
Um,
distance-wise.
Oh, Auburn.
Auburn's one, yeah.
10-win football. Wait a minute. When's the last time?
Is my sourcing wrong?
The last Auburn 10-win football team would have been 2017.
Okay, so that's.
So I think you're
I guess I
basically
was
within.
counting that. Yeah,
we got it. Yeah,
5-6 years.
Yeah.
Or we just take them off. And then
Oregon State, Auburn, Michigan, and we got a guess of Oklahoma.
Nope.
No.
Not unless no. I mean, not from my research.
So we're still looking for another 10-win football team from this past season. Well, in the Pac-12, that was Oregon State, Washington, USC, Utah. In the Big 12, that was TCU, Kansas State. That's it. In the Big 10, that was Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. In the SEC, that was Alabama, LSU.
So not this past season. Sorry,
Okay.
I flubbed that.
We got a Tulane guess, or Rutgers. They've won 10 football games.
Oregon's future rival.
Oregon's future rival
is Rutgers.
Oh,
no, it was just a Rutgers joke.
Man, folks. So not a 10-win. See, I thought I was going to get it.
Not this last year was a 10. The 10-win season would have been in 2018.
18. 2018. 2018. No, they're not good enough in basketball. I was going to say Ole Miss. They're a baseball, football. They would have gotten it. No, not basketball. Texas A&M.
Nope.
No, they didn't win 10 games. They only won 9.
Almost had it.
As well. And not Arkansas. Mississippi. Not Mississippi State.
You're going to kick yourself.
I'm not just
in the chats.
I take nothing, no pride in knowing the baseball or basketball. So I was expecting.
But you should know 2018 10-win football.
Oh, Texas won. They went. They won a Sugar Bowl that year. They went 10-4. Yes,
it was Texas.
So they went to an Elite Eight and they went to a College World Series. Okay.
Yeah, they're good at baseball.
I've lost all track of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, baseball doesn't bring much, and we're not net negative in baseball, but barely any schools bring money in for baseball. I just would hate to see it because our program of baseball is at a level where we could go to more World Series, and then again, that's just how do you pay for these coaches? And we have boosters and donors. It's just like I don't foresee it relying on boosters and donors in a weaker conference to be an option. Wow. So I mean, it is cool for the Big Ten. It is like those matchups, and it's cool for Oregon. I believe about half their fan base.
Yeah, the matchups are cool, and that's the thing that. Here are the things that intrigue me and excite me about this. Is yes, getting to see matchups that are fun to think about and talk about. USC and Ohio State's like at the marquee, but even like I'm a nerd, so I even think about Minnesota and UCLA playing would be an interesting matchup. Then the second one is, again, I'm thinking of this as a content creator, thinking of, how do you structure the conference? What's your division lineup going to look like? And what's your schedule going to look like and all that? but in no way do those two things come anywhere close to the damage that is done of the sport. No.
Because if you think about your first statement, it is fun to play the fantasy of, these matchups. And maybe that's what bowl games were supposed to do for us in that model.
Yes.
But 20 years from now, when you look back and all of that fantasy, we will just realize we got rid of the core of college football was the regionality. We got rid of that because the cooler matchups make more money for a little bit of time, but they'll lose their luster. And
they will. Yeah.
I don't, and nobody has stepped up to fix it. And that's why I'm talking about lawsuits. I'm not a guy that would sue somebody, but if you're Oregon State right now, you are being forced out. And it is, I will say, it's Oregon State's problem too. We were on the chopping block to be forced out. The fan support has wavered over the years because we have sucked. And it just sucks that Jonathan Smith has pulled us out of the gutter. And the National hasn't seen it yet. I mean, we were 5th in the Pac-12 pre-rankings, and the Pac-12 is stacked. I still think put us right up there at the top with the other guys. And so all of that has built to the new stadium, and the baseball team is building facilities. And the town has rallied around Jonathan Smith, and he's sold and built the blue collar culture here. And so for the 130 years of existence, we've had this chance to get a national championship. We never have. I only want that chance to continue. Not 130 years. Close to that, though. Geez. I mean, the Civil War has been played since the 1800s. Oregon State is the oldest OSU. And it just won't survive the Mountain West, in my opinion.
When you talk about national championship aspirations and what could have been, I think one of the great misses in college football history that doesn't get talked about hardly at all is the 2000 33-30 loss at Washington. Otherwise, we've got a Oklahoma-Oregon State national championship game.
Yeah, game down to the wire with Jonathan Smith. And he's brought that level of excitement and potential back, same guy. And I think you could see that value if you're Mark or ESPN. But I don't know. That year, the Fiesta Bowl, we absolutely throttled Notre Dame. It was 40-something to 3.
41-9.
Chad Johnson, TJ Hushmanzada, Trent Bray, our defensive coordinator. Our special teams coach was on that team. Jake Cookus. Trent Bray might be a little younger. He might have came after. But Jake Cookus was. He had an interception against the Ducks to cement his legacy. And all of that
Connor,
history
for as much as I'd like to reminisce, I think we're losing the chat on this one, and we've got another call or two coming in, but it's always good to talk college football with you. You're extremely knowledgeable. Love the insight. You know that. So
my hope's not done yet. I'll call you when we accept our Big 12 invite. All right.
Good luck.
Mark, thank you.
Thanks, Connor. We'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Let's make this a final. I was going to make it a final call. We got two calls. Here we go. 2 more calls. Chris is on the line. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, sir.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Fine. How are you?
I am doing great. I want to let everyone know that we've posted our channel links to our SEC channel and Big 12 channel. Those are 2 new channels. We would ask people to please subscribe. All right, Chris, what do you got tonight?
Oh, well, I guess I'll let you pick the topic. I don't know. I didn't know Oregon was as good as they were in 2000. Were they as good as that you were just saying? I guess they
Oregon
must have been.
State.
Oh, Oregon State. Okay.
Yeah, they lost to Washington 33-30. Otherwise, they would have been undefeated and played in the BCS championship game.
Yeah, but they still played in the Fiesta Bowl, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the Dennis Erickson, I think, was the coach, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I was trying to remember because that's been some time ago, but so they've actually had a season where they were almost pretty close to being a champion then, weren't they?
Yeah, that was the one. Absolutely.
Well, like I say, why don't you pick the topic? And I don't want to spend much time on it since you have another caller, but go ahead and pick it.
Chris, you're calling in and you're asking me to pick the topic?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me think. I'm just going to pick something out of thin air. BYU 1984.
You really want to talk about that?
No. I really don't. What's on your mind, Chris? Throw something out there.
If that's what you want to talk about, that'd be all right. But, well, okay. The one question I guess I have, I think it deals a little bit with what Connor was talking about here. I think these programs, they've put enough into their program. I think that I don't really think it's fair to kick them to the street or whatever, if that's what they're doing. Maybe they're not, but, I don't know what it takes to get, maybe you can tell me, for a program like that to be, what were they, when they were representative of the Pac-12, I'm guessing they have to meet to be even in the conference, you have to meet certain requirements, don't you?
Yes, those requirements. Yes, you do.
Okay, so unless the Mountain West is making it harder, or I guess elevating themselves, which I haven't really followed it to close enough to know, it would be a step down for them to have to join the Mountain West, wouldn't it? I mean, that's not a step up, is it?
No, sir. But we're down to 4 Pac-12 teams, Pac teams. So they may be looking for survival.
Well, okay. Now, this is what I'm thinking, Mark, and I've already kind of outlined this, and I don't know if you want to hear it, but I still think the best way to realign, I've already kind of talked about it. I think Big Ten should kick Rutgers and Maryland to the curb. Sorry, they just should do it. And then just annex the Pac-12. I mean, you get to 24, you get all the good. I don't know that there's really bad. You can say that Arizona and Arizona State aren't very good, but that's, they're not gonna stay at the bottom. And I don't understand why that's such a big problem to where it's like, oh no, we only want like 8 of them or whatever it is, or 6 or 4, whatever it is. Why not I don't understand why it's such a problem to, I know Oregon and Washington are 2 of the better ones, no doubt, but I don't understand why you have to limit it, I guess, to as many teams as it is. Is it 8 or I don't know how many it is, but
we've had this conversation before, Chris. Here's the deal. These are commodities. They have certain levels of value based on how many eyeballs they bring to the TV screen. So each one of these football programs, and if the Big Ten is taking in these teams from the Pac conference, they are working with their TV partners to determine, are we going to be paid the amount of money that we need to be paid to distribute the money at a level to stay with our current distribution, or is it going to increase?
Are you trying to explain to me? Well, yeah, sure. But you know what? Rutgers 4 and 8 or whatever they are typically. I mean, that's about right, isn't it? Okay, well, you're going to really lose a lot by letting Rutgers go. I mean, I don't understand. I guess I don't really get it. And I know that some of those programs in the Pac-12 aren't very good right now, but Colorado's terrible. But I just kind of think from a long term, I mean, if you look at things right now, I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to include all the 12 teams, but I think if you look at it more long term, potential growth, potential, kind of like what Connor was saying. I don't know much about Corvallis. I've never been there. Or what's the other place he was talking? Pullman, I guess. I don't know what that place is like either. Maybe there's good reasons not to include them. I really wouldn't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know a whole lot about it. But if they're playing at a respectable level, I think that would kind of trump a lot of it.
Okay.
Oregon State's playing at a respectable level. I mean,
regardless of what level anybody's playing at, if Fox and the other television networks, NBC, CBS, are paying the Big Ten X number of dollars, it's $1 billion per year. If they're paying the Big Ten that amount of money, then the Big Ten needs to determine with their negotiations with Fox, if we bring these schools on, fill in the blank, Oregon State, Washington State, whomever it is, how much more money will you pay us to broadcast these additional games? And if Fox says $3, then they've got to take that $1 billion and distribute it, if they still add those teams, among more teams. And the current schools are not going to approve that because they're not making as much money.
Well, you're talking about adding. All right, I'm going to defend myself on this one because the counterpoint is, okay, well, we need to bring in Miami, Florida. We need to bring in. It doesn't really matter who you want to bring in.
They add value.
Well, go ahead and do it. Bring in Clemson, bring in Florida State, bring in Miami, bring in. I just don't see that that's going to necessarily make it that much better. I mean, I might be way off base. I know Clemson's really good. But is their television market so much better? I mean, I kind of think that it's like fool's gold. I mean, yeah, right away they'll be a lot better, but then maybe 10 years from now.
These networks know how many people watch these teams
right now.
Yeah. That you're right. That somewhat changes through the years. Somewhat.
Well, I guess all I'm trying to get at, Mark, is I don't want to say the people that are putting this together don't know what they're doing, but I kind of have suspicions that they might not know what they're doing. Because I think you couldn't really ask for a better geography, I guess, than Colorado, Utah. I don't know anything about.
So, Chris, everything you bring to the table, it makes total sense if you're thinking about this geographically. That's what you want college football to go back to. And that I totally agree with you. In theory, I agree with you. If this was not a business, it's just like a lot of other leagues and conferences that are non-revenue generated. Who are the teams that, if you take a Division III conference, who are they playing? They're playing the schools that are closest to them because the travel's easy, because there are natural rivalries and all these other reasons. But this is a big business. Hello, Chris? You with me? I think Chris has left, so we'll take our final call of the night. Chris, call back another time. Dr. C's calling in.
Hey, what's going on, Mark?
Not too much. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, I know that this is the last call, so I'll make it quick. But I wrote down 10 layman questions for this college football season.
Oh, well, okay.
General, and I hope you can answer them.
I hope so too.
Here we go. So, does Utah win the Pac-12 again?
No.
If so, who? If not, who?
You're asking me to make predictions. Well, I don't have my predictions, so these are not final predictions because I've not made those yet. But I would say USC.
USC, okay. Let's see. Will this Pac-12 season be better than the last? I know you mentioned they had the most improved conference. Will this season surpass that?
No.
Okay. Is Alabama versus Texas week 2 the most important national televised game?
Well, every game's nationally televised. What do you mean by that?
Is this the most important game of the season, Texas, Alabama?
Most important game of the season?
Yeah, I've heard by numerous college football channels that this is the most important game of the season, Texas, Alabama.
The most important non-conference game of the season?
Yeah.
Okay, that's different. Yes, I'll agree with that.
Okay. Who wins it?
I'm not as convicted on that, but yeah, I'll say so.
Who wins that game?
Alabama.
Okay. Does Texas win the Big 12?
Yes.
Does Florida State make the playoff?
No.
Will there be a surprise team in the playoff, a la TCU?
I sure hope so, but no.
No. Okay. Will Texas A&M finish?
Do you consider Texas a surprise team in the playoff?
No.
Okay. Then no.
Well,
they've never made it.
Yeah, you know what?
Close.
I might, if I think about it long enough, I might say yes. Will Texas A&M finish first or second in the SEC West?
No.
Okay. Most improved team for this upcoming year?
Ooh, that's a good one. I will say most improved team. Let me think. I'm going to go Texas A&M and Miami.
Nice. I like that. Well, Miami, but not so much Texas A&M. I am a Hogs fan. Who wins the Heisman?
I hate Heisman questions just because I don't know what other people are going to vote. I will say the Heisman is going to interesting. The Heisman goes to
It's most likely going to be a quarterback.
Go out of the box here. The Heisman goes to oh, I might go that route now. Here's one for you. You want an outside the box?
Sure.
I'm going to say Will Shipley.
Will Shipley?
Yes.
Really? Wow. I didn't see that one. Nice. Hey, that's out of the box. Hey, if someone wants to put some money on that, I'm sure they win.
I always respond. I always respond to Heisman questions the same way. You're asking me to determine what other people are going to vote.
Yeah.
Fair. If somebody was asking me who's the best running back in the country or who the best quarterback is, then I'll answer that. But yeah.
All right, and then 10 Georgia three-peats. True or false?
False.
False.
That's a tough one to pull a trigger on because I do think they've got the best team in the country, but I'll take the field.
Don't they have a cupcake schedule too?
Yes. Yeah, they've got basically their ticket has already been punched to the playoff.
Interesting.
They do.
And then I'll just do a bonus question because I know a lot of people were talking about USC in the Big Ten. Does USC win the Big Ten in their first 5 years?
Yes.
And if so, how many times?
Your over-under is 1.5.
1.5. I was gonna say 2. I think what's funny is the Big Ten fans from what I've been listening a lot are saying, "Oh, USC has no idea what they're getting into." But as you've stated numerous times, historically, USC has done more than okay against the Big Ten.
Yeah. I don't know that the Big Ten, if USC gets their act together, and if Lincoln Riley's as good as some people believe he is, which I'm not completely convinced, he's a really good coach. I don't know if he's legendary coach, but if he's the next Pete Carroll, then wow, the Big Ten could be hurting.
Is USC Riley the defense going to be as far as it takes them
this year?
This year, and
the offense is going to be a top 3 offense in the country. Yes, it's about making the defense respectable. If they have a top 50 defense, they should make the playoff.
I think with the portal, the folks they got from the portal, I think they will have the defense last year was horrid. I think it will be competitive. And I think they can win with that offense. All you need is a competitive defense, not a lights out defense, not a stellar defense, but just a competitive defense.
Yeah, hold good teams to 30 points.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mark. Well, that's all I've got. I thank you so much for taking my call, and thank you for answering my questions.
I
Oh, hey.
appreciate the thoughtful list there. Yes.
Yeah, last thing. So every year I meet the VP at this convocation that we have for before the semester starts, because I work in, and I give him a team that's coming out of nowhere that's going to surprise everyone. I know we talked about most improved, but who would be a team that's really going to like win 9 games that no one really sees 9 wins?
9-3. Give me a second. I got one team in mind. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone else. A team that never wins 9 games that will do it this year is Texas Tech.
Texas Tech. Yeah. Hey, you know what? They come in second in the Big 12, you think?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I think Texas wins it. Texas Tech comes in second place. That's going to be a tough place to play from now on, Texas Tech, going to Lubbock.
Yeah, they've got a game against Oregon early. That's going to be interesting.
That's going to be an awesome game. That for any football fan that wants to see a physical football game, that is like going to be, I hate to say it, an SEC caliber physical game. Oregon State, Texas Tech. Is that a fair comment?
A physical game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a really physical game.
I think a lot of people would scoff at that because it's a Big 12 team and a Pac-12 team, but actually those are physical teams. So I'll go
Oregon State plays with three tight ends at times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a physical game, a real physical game. That's going to show. I think if Texas Tech is for real, and has a legitimate chance to win the Big Ten and surprise everyone, that's the game. That's going to show us everything.
All right, Dr. C.
All right, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Again. Have a great one.
Have a good night. Talk to you later. Another good night here at the Voice of College Football. A little Sunday get together with everyone. Appreciate you being here. And yes, as John is letting us know, don't forget here in 5 minutes. Is it 5 minutes? John put 20 minutes. Maybe it's a 9:15 show. 9:15 Eastern, 6:15 Pacific over on the USC channel is Trojan Conquest Live with Tim and Rick. Talking USC football. So again, get on over there in 20 minutes. Other than that, I am going to size up all this realignment business from as many angles as I can come up with. If you have any specific requests, hit me up with your requests. If you've noticed, we have posted videos looking at Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah against the Big 12. We will continue to do that with all the other teams that are joining and leaving to go to the Big 12 and the Big 10. So be looking out for our videos sizing up Washington against the Big 10, Oregon against the Big 10, and I believe a Colorado video is in store as well. Appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football, Texas Buckeye and others. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you in 15 minutes over on the USC channel. And please subscribe to the SEC channel and the Big 12 channel. We want to put on a huge rush to get them to 1,000 subs here very quickly here at the Voice of College Football. See you soon.